Chapter 883. That's right. Since Poplar Fruit is a good guy and meets our standards, why can't we accept him? Fu Chuanmon's mother and father were confused by Fu Chuanmon's words. They even began to question themselves. No. Mother Fong slapped her thigh, pointed at Fu Chunman and said, Xiaoman, didn't you say that you are here to help Aunt criticize Poplar Fruit? See, after a long time, you are here to help Bei, aren't you? Fu Chunman smiled and quibbled. Aunt, I'm not here to help Bei, and I'm not blindly supporting anyone. I'm just objectively helping you analyze what kind of person this Poplar Fruit is. To be honest, isn't his character good? His background, knowledge, and work are all in line with Aunt's requirements, right? Aunt, such a good son-in-law is not easy to find. Fine. Don't try to fool me. A trace of hesitation appeared on Mother Fong's face, but she quickly said resolutely, he is good, but no matter how good he has nothing to do with our family. Think about it, if a man with a child marries our Bei at such a young age, how can our Fong family face the world? Fu Chunman knew that her aunt had this knot in her heart, but she already had a strategy to deal with it. Fu Chunman smiled and said, Aunt, I know, if it was another man or another child, would I still be willing to come and persuade you? She reached out and shouted, Bei, it's time for you to show off, quickly bring the things down. Fong Bei didn't hide this time. She came down with the family's laptop. When Mother Fong looked at her, she was still pouting and looking unconvinced. Mother Fong ignored her. She turned her head and said to Fu Chunman, Xiaoman, what do you mean by this? Other men's children are other men's children. This Poplar Fruit's child. Does she have 3 heads and 6 arms? Aunt, you may not believe me, but among my friends and colleagues, 9 out of 10 say that they like Kiki. Kiki is Poplar Fruit's daughter. She is very cute, looks like a little fairy, and also very smart and sensible. Fu Chunman urged Fong Bei, and said to Mother Fong with a smile. Seeing her, I feel like I have a gap in my life. After seeing her, even I want to find a man to give birth to a daughter. Fu Chunman held her chest and said longingly, Aunt Bei is too lucky. She has such a considerate and perfect boyfriend, and also a cute daughter calling her mom. Chi, call me sister. Fong Bei connected to the computer and said in a muffled voice, Are you jealous? Here, take it. Mother Fong waved her hand in disbelief. Take it. Fu Chunman laughed heartily. Bei, you heard it, if your mom doesn't agree in the end, you can't stop me from pursuing Poplar Fruit. Fong Bei snorted angrily, and didn't continue their conversation. Mother Fong looked at Fu Chunman suspiciously. She thought that Fu Chunman was deliberately provoking her. But now, it seems that there is something that she didn't know. Father Fong has been watching silently from the side. He had already seen through Fu Chuanmon's little tricks, but he was still puzzled. That Poplar Fruit, is it really worth it for her to be a lobbyist for his daughter? It is actually Happy Base Camp? After a long time, the video that Fong Bei broadcasted on TV turned out to be a video of Happy Stronghold. Although their family often watches the fast forward, but why did Fong Bei take it out now? What is this? Mother Fong looked at her daughter frantically dragging the progress bar. And she suddenly remembered that the newspaper that her niece showed her just now mentioned that Poplar Fruit had participated in Happy Base Camp. The authority of Nanua Evening News was without a doubt, and in addition to what she saw yesterday, Mother Fong still believed that Poplar Fruit was like what the newspaper said, an outstanding young man. But Mother Fong felt that even if others exaggerated Poplar Fruit, Mother Fong wouldn't change her mind. The progress bar was a little too far behind, so Fong Bei hesitated for a while, but still chose to play it the moment Poplar Fruit appeared. Poplar Fruit's appearance was still a little shocking to Mother Fong and Father Fong. After all, the big boy who stood outside their house shamelessly for a day and a night had suddenly turned into a shining star on the stage. The contrast was too huge. But before Mother Fong and Father Fong could recover from their shock, the background music and the style of the program suddenly changed, and a close-up of a cute little girl appeared on the screen. Haha. Father Fong couldn't help but laugh. Then it was Kiki's turn. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as they had imagined. Chi suppressed the crowd the moment she appeared, and the little guy was scared. Seeing Poplar Fruit carry Kiki, the cute little girl in the princess dress revealed a charming smile. Mother Fong couldn't help but mutter, "This is outrageous. How old is the child? Let her go on stage." It was Mr. He who invited her. Seeing that her mother was blaming Poplar Fruit, Fong Beibei defended Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't want to agree at first, but Kiki thought it was fun and wanted to go on stage herself, so he let her go in the end. After that, Kiki once again completed a wonderful catwalk to the applause of the audience. During this process, Kiki's cleverness and cuteness, as well as Poplar Fruit's considerate fatherly love, were all reflected. Mother Fong and Father Fong began to fall silent. After watching Mr. He's introduction of Poplar Fruit and his questions about the many languages Poplar Fruit knew, Fong Beibei skipped to the scene where Kiki went on stage again. Chi-Chi performed a short song. The little girl's voice was soft and childish. Even Mother Fong couldn't help but narrow her eyes. A smile began to bloom in the corner of her eyes. "I taught her." Fong Beibei puffed out her chest proudly after Poplar Fruit explained that Kiki's singing was taught by his girlfriend. During the balloon segment, Kiki stuck to her father and caused him to fail in the end. Father Fong couldn't help but laugh at this scene. Mother Fong looked at him and wanted to say something, but stopped herself. She wanted to laugh too, but this cute little girl was Poplar Fruit's daughter. She didn't want to laugh and felt terrible holding it in. "My daughter is so cute." Fu Chunman didn't say anything so as not to affect the effect. Now that the video was over, she smiled and said, "Auntie, don't talk about whether she's Poplar Fruit's child or not. Even if she has nothing to do with us, I still want to hug such a beautiful child." Kiki and Beibei are very close. The two of them are like mother and daughter, or should I say sisters. Fu Chunman smiled. "Why can't we accept it? Kiki's mother passed away, and her mother was an orphan. She didn't have any relatives. Beibei and Poplar Fruit are married, so Kiki is her daughter and your granddaughter. Other than the fact that they aren't related by blood, they aren't inferior in any other way." Mother Fong fell silent. She didn't oppose it as strongly as before. Chapter 884. Standing in front of the Fong family's gate, Poplar Fruit gritted his teeth and pressed the doorbell resolutely. At this moment, a white and tender little finger suddenly appeared in front of Poplar Fruit's eyes. It was about to touch the doorbell that tugged at Poplar Fruit's heartstrings. "Kiki." Poplar Fruit reacted quickly and pressed Kiki's little hand down. He glared at Kiki, who was too curious, and said in a low voice, "What did Dad say to you in the car? Come to Sister Beibei's house, don't move, don't talk, and be obedient." That's right, Yanghua had thought about it for a long time today, and in the end, she still ran over to bring Chi-Chi over. She planned to go straight to the point, and use Chi-Chi's charm to see if she could open up a gap between Father and Mother Fong. Dad pressed the doorbell. Kiki pouted. She was very dissatisfied with her father's behavior of, only the magistrate is allowed to do whatever he wants, but not the common people. She heard her father press the doorbell, and then a muffled sound came from inside. This magical imagination made Kiki feel particularly interested. "Go back, Dad will let you play as much as you want, but Kiki must be obedient today." Poplar Fruit began to threaten Kiki in her ear. "As long as Kiki is obedient and behaves well, Dad will let you watch TV for a week, no for a night. But if you don't behave well, Dad will take away Kiki's Barbie doll, and you won't be able to play with it for a month." "Oh, no, Dad is bad." Kiki pouted, clenched her little fist, and punched her father's chest. Creak. The gate of the Fong family's house opened. The person who opened the door was an older sister that Poplar Fruit had never seen before. Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. He held his daughter in his left hand, and held the gift that he left in the car yesterday with his right hand. He looked up at the house number. "That's right, it's here." "Puchi." Fu Chunman, who quickly ran out to open the door, smiled. The Poplar Fruit she saw did not have the airs of a celebrity at all. He only looked like a young man who had just married into his family. She covered her mouth and laughed. "You're Poplar Fruit, right? I'm Beibei's cousin. Come in." "Hello, cousin." Poplar Fruit shouted in a panic. "Just call me Big Sister Man." "Aya Kiki, how are you? Come, let me hug you, okay?" Fu Chunman stepped aside to let Poplar Fruit in. But when she closed the door, she immediately followed behind Poplar Fruit and smiled. Oh, Kiki shook her head and shyly hid her head in her father's arms. Facing strangers, Kiki's skin was still very thin. Uncle, Auntie, hello. After entering the door, Poplar Fruit saw Father and Mother Fong looking at him in unison, as well as his girlfriend, whose eyes were filled with joy. Big sister Bebe. 2 days apart felt like 3 years. Kiki glanced at Fong Bebe, who was sitting in the innermost part of the room. She happily waved her little hand and shouted. She wanted to slide down from her father's arms and run over to Big Sister Bebe to tell her how much she missed her for the past 2 days. Poplar Fruit did not let Kiki go down. He urged Kiki in her ear. You also have to call them Grandpa and Grandma. Poplar Fruit felt that the better Kiki performed, the more likely Father and Mother Fong would acknowledge Kiki. However, Kiki hesitated and did not know how to say it. Call them Grandpa and Grandma. Who calls them Grandpa and Grandma? Fong Bebe got up and walked over to take Kiki from Poplar Fruit's arms. She seemed to be blaming her. Kiki curled her arms around Big Sister Bebe's neck in confusion. She was already confused by Big Sister Bebe. Calling them Grandpa and Grandma was understandable, but what were Grandpa and Grandma? This was the first time Kiki had heard of it. This is Big Sister Bebe's father, and this is Big Sister Bebe's mother. So Kiki has to call him Grandpa and her Grandma. Fong Bebe smiled and held Kiki's little hand as she explained. Father Fong was fine, but Fong Bebe pretended not to see Mother Fong's awkward expression. Although she did not quite understand, Kiki still obediently opened her golden mouth and called out crisply, Grandpa, Grandma. Although she still sounded like a child, her voice was very pleasant to the ears. Humph. Mother Fong wanted to reject this form of address, and also wanted to scold her daughter and Poplar Fruit. But in front of Kiki, Mother Fong only snorted slightly in the end. Her expression was awkward, and she did not say anything. Worried that Kiki would be frightened by the coldness, Fu Chunman smiled and walked over. She held Kiki's little hand and said, Kiki is so obedient. Bebe, what do you think Kiki should call me? Fu Chunman and Fong Bebe hugged Kiki as they chatted and laughed. Kiki also temporarily shook off the nervousness she had when she came in, and revealed an angelic smile. Although Poplar Fruit was busy sending the gifts to Father and Mother Fong, their attention was uncontrollably attracted by Kiki. All right, just leave it. You youngsters are all working together, aren't you? Mother Fong snorted and said something that Yongwu didn't understand. Poplar Fruit swore that he did not collude with Fong Bebe. Early in the morning he drove on the road, thinking that his girlfriend was still resting. He did not even call her once. All right, Shu. Poplar Fruit. Fong Bebe awkwardly changed her words quickly and called Poplar Fruit by his full name. She said, My parents haven't eaten breakfast yet. I haven't eaten either. Fu Chunman laughed. Kiki hasn't eaten either. Kiki joined in the fun, raised her little fist and giggled. It's so late, and you don't let Kiki eat breakfast. Fong Bebe glared at Poplar Fruit. No. I let her drink milk before we came. Poplar Fruit complained. He scratched his head, looked at Father and Mother Fong, and asked, Uncle, Auntie, why don't we go out for morning tea together? It's just the right time. Who's we with you? Mother Fong snorted, and her mouth was still unforgiving. When she said that, Father Fong moved half of his butt and sat down again. Let's go, let's go. Fu Chunman ran over with a smile, pulled Mother Fong, and tried to pull her up. Did you drive here? Fong Bebe whispered to Poplar Fruit. Papa drove. Kiki became lively, and answered before her father could finish his sentence. Yes, we should all be able to sit down. I'll start the car first, and you can lead the way later. I don't know a good restaurant for morning tea. Poplar Fruit said softly. He took the keys and was ready to go out. Old Fong, you drive our family's car. Why do you have to squeeze in with others? Mother Fong was pulled by Fu Chunman, and when she heard Poplar Fruit's words, she shouted, Dad, there's no need. Fong Bebe walked over with Kiki in her arms, pulled her father's arm, and said with a smile, Poplar Fruit's car is very big, it's definitely enough to sit down. Let's not waste it. Father Fong was pulled away by his daughter. Of course he walked briskly, unlike Mother Fong who was dragging. When he turned his head, he and Kiki stared at each other. The little girl was caught peeking, blinked, and quickly turned her head away. She shrank into Sister Bebe's neck, pretending that nothing had happened. Chapter 885. Poplar Fruit stayed at the Fong family's house for the whole day. At night he went out to buy groceries with Bebe, preparing to show off his cooking skills. As for Kiki, she was left at the Fong family's house, and her parents took care of her on her behalf. Fu Chunman left at noon, as she had something to deal with at work. She would come over for dinner in the evening. Although Poplar Fruit and the others didn't know what happened at home while they went out to buy groceries, they seemed to have made good progress by leaving Kiki alone with her parents. Even Mother Fong, who had always been expressionless, seemed to have changed a lot. When Poplar Fruit and the others came back, Mother Fong pretended to be unhappy. However, the laughter that Poplar Fruit and the others heard outside the door was definitely not an illusion. "What did you say to Grandpa and Grandma?" Poplar Fruit secretly whispered to Kiki when no one was paying attention. Kiki told the story of Pleasant Goat and Beautiful Goat catching the big bad wolf. Chi-Chi waved her small hands, as if she was very proud of the fact that she had a very good audience just now. Her story was made up by her own imagination while playing with her crayons. Of course, no one could understand the drawing except for Chi-Chi herself. "Did Grandpa and Grandma like it?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Yes. Kiki felt that this question was questioning her. She stuck out her small chest and said, "Kiki is very sweet." Kiki liked some of the popular online slang, and she didn't even want to speak properly. Good. Kiki is awesome." Poplar Fruit smiled and rubbed Kiki's little head. He said, "Kiki can continue to play with Grandpa and Grandma. Later, Daddy will make braised fish for Kiki, okay?" Yes. Kiki loves to eat braised fish the most," Kiki said with shining eyes. She liked to eat her father's dishes. No matter what it was, she would say that it was her favorite. Of course, Poplar Fruit knew that his daughter really liked to eat fish the most. Poplar Fruit turned around and walked towards the kitchen. However, he heard Kiki jumping around in the living room and shouting, Papa said that he wants to make braised fish, a very delicious braised fish." This little guy was really a little reserved when he was unfamiliar with someone, but when it was someone he was familiar with, he immediately became crazy. It hadn't even been a day yet. Now that she was familiar with her grandparents, she couldn't wait to share all the good news with them. Poplar Fruit blushed with shame as he followed Fong Bebe, who was picking vegetables at the side, and said, "Won't your parents be unhappy with Kiki's antics?" "It's okay." Fong Bebe raised her head. Her somewhat thin face bloomed with a smile that made Poplar Fruit feel at ease. She said, "Can't you see that they still like it very much? Don't be scared by my mother." Fong Bebe's hands didn't stop moving. She continued, "She's just scaring you. Actually, my mother is a very good person. She likes children very much. Although she kept saying harsh words yesterday, don't worry, she will accept Kiki." After being comforted by Fong Bebe, Poplar Fruit's anxious heart finally calmed down a little. At this time, Fong Bebe's cell phone rang. She wiped the water stains on her hands, picked it up and looked at it. She said, "It's a WeChat message from my cousin." Suddenly, her tone began to become very angry. "Uncle, someone is still slandering you on the internet, saying that you're deliberately creating hype and fishing for fame." Before Poplar Fruit could say anything, Fong Bebe became angrier and angrier. She was very familiar with Poplar Fruit. She could tell at a glance that the people on the internet were all framing Poplar Fruit. She said angrily, "How can they say that? The previous things were obviously done by someone else, and now they're all blaming you, saying that you're creating hype." Okay. Poplar Fruit turned around with a smile and said lightly, "Someone is deliberately slandering me. I know. Although I don't know who it is, let's ignore them. The more you ignore them, the more excited they will be." "But uncle, you didn't do this. You're being scolded for no reason," Fong Bebe said with a pout. Although they were scolding Poplar Fruit, Fong Bebe had already linked Poplar Fruit to herself. If it weren't for the fishy smell of the fish that he had just caught, Poplar Fruit would have hugged Fong Bebe and comforted her. He smiled and said, "Baby, are they saying that I'm creating hype to become famous?" "Yes," Fong Bebe said as she looked at her cell phone. "Then we shouldn't respond." Poplar Fruit smiled calmly and said, It takes two to clap. They're arguing on the internet like this. After a while, no one will care about them. But Feng Beibei was still a little unhappy. It's okay. Anyway, I don't want to be a star. I don't care what others think of me. As long as you still believe in me and trust me, that's enough. Poplar Fruit smiled brightly and said, the most important thing now is to let your parents recognize me as their son-in-law. Feng Beibei was overjoyed by her boyfriend's affectionate words at the beginning. All the rumors on the internet were thrown to the back of her mind. She smiled and nodded sweetly, then continued to help Poplar Fruit pick the vegetables. After a while, Feng Jingji's father staggered over and stood at the door to take a look. He saw Poplar Fruit cutting the shredded potatoes deftly with a knife. He nodded slightly and turned to leave. Uncle. Poplar Fruit could sense it, but when he turned around to say hello, he only saw Feng Jingji's father's back as he left. Baby, your father came and left just now. After Feng Jingji's father left, Poplar Fruit asked Feng Beibei nervously. You said that he didn't say anything. Did he think that I did something wrong? It can't be right. Feng Beibei was also a little nervous. Without a clue, Poplar Fruit could only continue to struggle with the meat dishes. He used 200% of his kung fu to stir-fry the vegetables. The big iron wok shook like a chef in a five-star hotel. Feng Jingji's mother walked over and saw Poplar Fruit sweating profusely as he stir-fried the vegetables. Feng Beibei thoughtfully handed him a plate and wiped the sweat off his forehead. She snorted with a strange expression and left without saying a word. Poplar Fruit and Feng Beibei looked at each other until Feng Beibei laughed and pushed him and said, Ignore my mother. Don't burn the vegetables. Wow. It smells so good. I want to taste it. With a cheer, Fu Chunman came back. She shouted and went straight to the dining table. There, Feng Beibei had already brought 6 dishes to the table. Each dish was steaming hot, delicious and juicy. It looked, smelled and tasted good. It was enough to make one's appetite soar. My papa made it. Chi-Chi happily ran over and pointed at the table and said proudly. However, after seeing Fu Chunman eat, she immediately got angry. Sister, you're so bad. You're eating papa's food. If you don't wash your hands, there will be worms in your stomach. Sister, use chopsticks. Come Kiki, try it too. Fu Chunman smiled and changed chopsticks. She picked up a piece of mushroom and gave it to Kiki. Immediately, the little girl was bought over. She chewed with her little mouth and didn't have time to expose and report. Feng Jingji's mother followed behind Kiki to protect her, worried that she would fall. Feng Jingji's mother glanced at the sumptuous dishes on the table. After a while, she found a flaw. It's a waste if we can't finish all these dishes. Chapter 886. Coming back from his girlfriend's house, Poplar Fruit was not as confused as he was at the beginning. Now the mother-in-law's attitude had changed a lot. Not only did she not express a strong objection to the existence of Kiki, but she also had a good time with Kiki when Poplar Fruit was not present. Of course, she was still serious about Poplar Fruit, but compared with before, she had made great progress. Feng Beibei did not come back with Poplar Fruit as she wished. She still needed to continue the ideological work of her parents at home. However, according to her curriculum plan, she would come back to class in 2 days at the latest. Kiki, do you like Grandpa and Grandma? Poplar Fruit drove the car and asked Kiki in the back seat with a smile. The little fellow was very happy today because her grandparents had been around her since noon, listening to her stories. Yes, Kiki twisted her body and wanted to move, but she was restrained by the seat belt. She had already learned to untie the seat belt by herself. If she was not careful, she would untie it and slip down, which gave Poplar Fruit a headache. For the safety of his daughter, Poplar Fruit spent the afternoon remodeling the baby safety seat. The buckle of the seat belt was replaced with a password lock. Even if Kiki could open it, she could not open it without the password. Then Dad will take Kiki to Grandpa and Grandma's house to play next week, okay? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. He felt that he played the family card well, and wanted to continue to use it. Okay. Kiki wants to eat prawns. Kiki felt that she had a good time at her grandparents' house. The most important thing was that her father rarely prepared such a sumptuous meal. and her grandmother also peeled prawns for her to eat. Fong Beibei forgot to tell him that Poplar Fruit did not know that the reason why he was able to enter the door so smoothly was actually because Fong Beibei and Fu Chunman had paved the way for him. When he got home, Poplar Fruit reported his safety to everyone. He also reported to Lu Suqin and his mother, who were anxiously waiting for his progress. "Mom, don't worry. Beibei's family's attitude has improved a lot," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Yes, Uncle and Aunt especially like Kiki." "No, you don't have to come over." Poplar Fruit was sweating profusely as he shouted. "They're still trying to get used to each other. If you come over, you might scare them." Poplar Fruit persuaded his mother in every way possible. He comforted her and said, "Don't worry, I'll try my best to talk to Beibei and try to bring her home for you to meet next year." Poplar Fruit was being careful. Although it was said to be next year, it might not necessarily be the spring festival. Poplar Fruit was not sure yet. After he got home, Poplar Fruit's life went back to normal. Although Fong Beibei was not back yet, and although there were paparazzi downstairs, Poplar Fruit did not accept any interviews or join the online scolding war. He happily went to exercise in the morning as usual, went to school during the day, and came back at night to buy groceries, cook and take care of Kiki. Other than calling Poplar Fruit's close friends, teacher he, and other friends in the entertainment industry to explain, Poplar Fruit put aside the public opinion criticism on the internet. This made Qin Shueishui feel especially uncomfortable. He thought that Poplar Fruit would jump out and scold them in an emotional state. Then he could command the internet water army to have a fierce scolding war with Poplar Fruit. They were not afraid of scolding Qin Shueishui. They were even looking forward to it. After all, they were professional trolls. However, Poplar Fruit completely ignored them. This made Qin Shueishui panic. The words she had prepared turned into a pile of waste paper and useless data on the hard drive. "Is this a human?" Qin Shueishui thought angrily. "Is a human who has to fight back even if he's beaten up? He's been slapped in the face, yet he's still indifferent?" Although they were indeed very happy to scold him on the internet, and many netizens were bewitched by them, Poplar Fruit did not respond, which made his plan fail to achieve the best effect for a while. The entire population of Poplar Fruit. More importantly, the customers were unhappy. Li Zichao had spent millions of yuan just to see Poplar Fruit in a sorry state and exhausted state. But now that the paparazzi had reported that Poplar Fruit did not seem to be affected at all, how could Li Zichao be happy? Poplar Fruit's attitude made many netizens who were still skeptical start to calm down. They began to reflect on the ups and downs on the internet in the past week. Qin Shueishui and the others' conspiracy could not be hidden for long. At this time, Poplar Fruit's casual evaluation spread from the student circle of Higashiyama University and quickly spread on the internet. If you have a clear conscience, then you can deal with it with equanimity. If you have a guilty conscience, then you can't escape the bright eyes of the masses. Yang Guo said this when he was teaching a class. When a student asked him about it, he would calmly answer with a smile. This sentence was quite philosophical. At first, it was forwarded by a few students. Later, after it was reposted by some influential Weibo, it finally appeared in front of the wavering netizens. Including the official Weibo of Yangqing Evening News, they also specially posted a long Weibo to introduce the whole incident and Poplar Fruit's response. They praised Poplar Fruit for really having the wise and elegant bearing of a scholar. Although Qin Shueishui was still trying her best to mobilize the internet water army to continue struggling, many netizens who had woken up had already made different comments about them. However, the real conclusion of this matter was a piece of news reported by Nanyue Evening News a week later. Since November, Yang Guo had experienced the nationwide popularity after the release of the novel. He had also experienced the low point of being slandered by the internet water army and the betrayal of his fans. However, he still calmly completed his thesis and made a summary of his 6 months of research on the theory of translation. The thesis, which was close to 100,000 words, was published by Translator Expert. Not only did it occupy a large page, but Translator Expert also added pages for Poplar Fruit for the first time, which meant that the November issue of Translator Expert became the most special issue since its publication. Nanhua Evening News interviewed Dean Yuan Qinghe of Guangdong Foreign Language School, who was considered one of the most authoritative experts in the translation and language field in Guangdong. He gave a very objective evaluation of Poplar Fruit's thesis. Although it was an objective evaluation, Dean Yuan was not stingy with his praise. He said that Poplar Fruit's thesis had completely established the position of variation theory, the best translation theory in the new century. Now we can see that the theory of variation has the value of changing an era. I hope that after the in-depth research of Poplar Fruit and other experts, the theory of variation can play a cornerstone role in the communication and dissemination of our country's culture in the future. On the internet, the well-known Professor Luo Lin also posted on Weibo and praised, "Poplar Fruit, you can publish a book now. Don't forget, when the time comes, send me a copy. I've already become your fan." Qin Shui and the others were still waving flags and shouting battle cries, trying to make the netizens believe that Poplar Fruit was maliciously creating hype with the intention of becoming famous and making money. However, Poplar Fruit had quietly achieved great success in other fields, giving these internet water army a resounding slap in the face. Who would continue to believe them? Chapter 887. Bang Bang Bang. In an ordinary residential building in Yangcheng, there was a house that looked a little shabby. The door was knocked so hard that the ground shook. However, no matter how hard the door was knocked, the entire corridor was quiet. Every door was tightly shut, as if no one had left the room. "Captain, there doesn't seem to be anyone." A young policeman who knocked on the door said in a low voice. Turning around, there were 15 or 16 policemen standing or crawling in the corridor. Not only were they armed, but they were also wearing thick bulletproof vests. "Captain, the camera." A policeman walking at the back suddenly pointed at the light bulb above his head and shouted in a low voice. He looked up. Wasn't that right? In the ceiling lamp above his head, other than the light bulb, there was also a rotating camera. "Break the door." The captain calmly waved his hand. He could not wait any longer. He could only break the door and enter. Behind him, a policeman carrying a large battering ram ran forward and swung it hard at the door. Boom! Under the lead of the captain, several policemen holding pistols entered in a single file amidst the splinters of wood flying in the air. "Police! Put down your weapons and kneel down with your hands on your head." A wave of panicked shouts was mixed with the energetic scolding of the policemen. There was a commotion and a few sounds of fists hitting flesh. Finally, the house quieted down. However, it was not over. The police who were guarding downstairs and had surrounded the entire building caught two fugitives, who had taken the risk to climb down from the window. They caught them and slipped back into the house. "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Qin Shui was really unlucky these few days. Originally, 2 days ago, Poplar Fruit's desperate counterattack had caused him to be covered in dust. He did not know how to explain it to his clients. In the end, when he came to the headquarters of the Internet Water Army today, he was beaten up by the police again. According to their usual experience, the police would at most arrest them and educate them. After paying some money, they would be fine. After all, there was no special law to convict them of spreading rumors on the internet. However, Qin Shui was the main culprit. If he escaped, everyone would have a better life. It would also allow the police to exploit them less. "Behave yourself," a young policeman shouted in a muffled voice as he held him down. "Isn't it just a small mistake?" Qin Shui said very slyly. "Sir, do you have to be so serious?" The black-faced and selfless police officer pulled him into the house and ignored him. At this time, Qin Shui gradually felt that something was wrong. Just now, there were many police cars with flashing lights downstairs, and there were also many policemen walking in the corridor. After entering, he was even more dumbfounded. How were these policemen in front of him? The two words "special police" were reflected in his eyes. Turning her head, Qin Shui was shocked to discover that the police officer who had grabbed him was also fully armed. His waist was bulging, and there must be a pistol stuffed there. Ouch! Before he had time to think about it, the young policeman who was on guard against him saw him sneakily looking at his pistol. Thinking that there was a ghost, he exerted force and pressed him to the ground. Brother, you're my biological father. Qin Shui wailed. Don't it hurts? After calming down, Qin Shui said weakly. Officer, did you recognize the wrong person? I'm just doing public relations online. Why do I need you to make such a big fuss? Qin Haiba. The captain put his pistol back into his holster and asked in a deep voice. Is it you? Qin Shui was stunned. He had always used his online name, so his real name had become a little unfamiliar. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded and said, It's me. Someone reported you for illegally selling drugs and gathering people to take drugs. The captain looked at him coldly. When Qin Shui heard this, her body trembled violently. He had the habit of secretly taking drugs, but that was only the beginning of this year, so the amount wasn't large. But he had never done the bad things that this police officer said. He knew that if he sold it in large quantities, it would be a capital offense. No, absolutely not. Qin Shui shook her head vigorously and cried out loudly, Police officer, I'm innocent. I'm a good person. How could I do such an illegal thing? You can save that for the court to tell the judge. The captain snorted coldly and took a bag of white flour from a police officer. He threw it on the table in front of Qin Shui and said, This was found under your sofa cushion. Qin Shui swore that he had never seen this bag of things before. Even though, with his decades of experience watching police and bandit movies, Qin Shui knew what this was, but this really wasn't his. His was still hidden in the safe at home, and it was more than half of this. How is this possible? How is this possible? Qin Shui looked at the at least half a pound of white flour in horror. With this amount, not to mention the sentence for selling, even if it was illegal possession, it would be enough for him to eat in prison for more than 7 years. Qin Shui's eyes suddenly flashed with the warning that Li Zichao had given him when he had accepted Li Zichao's $1 million reward. You'd better not lie to me. Otherwise, I'll make you beg for death. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. Qin Shui's tears and snot flowed out. He ran over and hugged the captain's thigh. He cried out, Someone must have framed me. I really didn't put this thing there. If you didn't put it there, why are you running? The captain snorted and got someone to drag him away. He said, Whether it's yours or not, we'll naturally find out. But I advise you to honestly tell us the source of the poison, so that we won't have to interrogate you when the time comes. Take him away. Following the captain's order, the police officers with live ammunition majestically escorted a group of dejected or terrified internet trolls away from the crime scene. The next day, in the most luxurious 5-star hotel at the foot of Yangqing's small waist, Li Zichao crumpled the newspaper in his hand into a ball and threw it into the trash basket. A trace of tyrannical pleasure flashed across his face. Bah, trash! This was not the first time he had dealt with those trash subordinates who had taken his money and messed up his matters. But this time, Li Zichao had become even crazier. He had actually framed Qin Shui, who had previously declared her loyalty to him, into a prison cell. Cleaning up these trash did indeed make Li Zichao feel a little morbid excitement, but it did not reach his G-spot at all. What he wanted to see was for someone to ruthlessly trample Poplar Fruit to the ground and trample on this former love rival, with all his might. Even if you're just her shield, but if you provoke me, I won't let you off. Li Zichao took a step forward and stepped on the newspaper that had fallen onto the floor instead of being put into the trash basket. His big foot moved away, and a small piece of news could be faintly seen on it. The Yangqing police have solved a major Tibetan drug case. The mastermind is actually the malicious initiator of the Poplar Fruit hype incident that caused a lot of commotion some time ago. According to reports, Qin XX is a big V on Weibo with as many as 6 million fans. He personally admitted that everything was planned by him. Chapter 888. Come back. Just as Li Zichao was going crazy in the hotel, smashing things everywhere, his cell phone suddenly rang. After the call was connected, a slightly gloomy male voice spoke. Why? Li Zichao shouted. Dad, didn't you say that I could skip work for 2 weeks a month? The person who called was Li Zichao's father, a man that Li Zichao looked down on, but who he had to rely on for his luxurious life. On the phone, Li Zichao's father snorted and said, "Okay, don't think that I don't know what you've been doing these days." "Dad," Li Zichao said, feeling wronged. "Are you going to speak up for that poplar fruit?" He's just an actor. You can do whatever you want, I won't care about you," Li Zichao's father said coldly. "But you shouldn't be involved in that kind of thing. Plus, the Zheng family caught you red-handed." "Ah, Dad, should I run away first?" Li Zichao panicked. He knew that Zheng Yujie and he were enemies now. Okay, if they wanted to touch you, it wouldn't be my turn to talk to you." Li Zichao's father was a little depressed. Although his official position was high, he was still far behind Zheng Mingsheng, who had become a big official in Guangdong province, one of the economic leaders. "It's different now," Li Zichao's father couldn't help but sigh and say. "The new #1 official has ascended the throne, and no one knows what he's going to do. So you'd better come back and know your place. With me watching you, at least you won't be harmed by others. Don't talk about your own death. When the time comes, I'll be implicated by you." "So, we're just going to let it go?" Li Zichao felt so wrong that he wanted to vomit blood. He shouted, "Are we just going to let this poplar fruit go? Have you forgotten? If it weren't for him, I would have been the son-in-law of the Zheng family." "Debts can be slowly collected," Mr. Li said slowly. "Every dog has its day. Zheng Mingsheng won't be able to enjoy his glory for long." Li Zichao's father didn't wait for Li Zichao to speak. He didn't allow Li Zichao to say anything. "Don't cause trouble outside. The bigger picture is more important." As soon as he put down the phone, Li Zichao smashed it again. His expression was ferocious and he was so angry that he was panting. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "Poplar fruit, just you wait. This matter is not over yet." Zheng Yujie, who was far away in Beijing, finally heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that poplar fruit had finally been cleared of wrongdoing, and that the online promoter named Qin Shuishui was about to face endless lawsuits and jail time. These days, Zheng Yujie was sad and distressed. She used to be a tough lady in the capital, but now she was living like a delicate little sister, Lin Daiyu. It was all because the word love was too difficult to write. Seeing the photo of poplar fruit and Fang Beibei walking around the campus hand in hand, Zheng Yujie was really sad. She didn't cry. She just sat by the bed and emptied herself for the whole night in a daze. Then, she fell seriously ill with a fever and in drip. However, when she saw that poplar fruit was besieged by so many internet trolls on the internet, Zheng Yujie's broken heart was picked up and glued back on itself. Even though she knew that that man already had another girl by his side, she was still worried about him. She didn't know how to eat for him, and she felt worried and anxious for him. Zheng Yujie could see the existence of the internet trolls behind this at a glance. However, it was the internet after all, and she couldn't do anything about it. Even if she wanted to help, the only way was to find out the mastermind behind this and beat him up. For this reason, she looked for Kai Simin, and Kai Simin found Fat Dragon, who often bragged about his hacking abilities. Fat Dragon easily dug out the information about Qin Shuishui, the mastermind behind all the internet trolls. And on Qin Shuishui's computer, Fat Dragon found the existence of Li Zichao, the actual culprit. So it was him. Zheng Yujie was so angry that she wanted to quarrel with Li Zichao. Unfortunately, Li Zichao appeared and disappeared unpredictably, and Zheng Yujie couldn't find him. In the end, Zheng Yujie asked her father, who had already taken office in Guangdong province, to help Li Zichao stop the matter of poplar fruit. However, she also wanted to help poplar fruit. She was so anxious that she couldn't find anyone, but she actually found Zheng Mingsheng. After all, poplar fruit had once walked into Zheng Mingsheng's field of vision as Zheng Yujie's boyfriend. With this relationship, poplar fruit had played with his daughter's feelings. Zheng Mingsheng was already merciful enough not to add insult to injury. Help him. Anyway, Zheng Mingsheng turned his head and threw his daughter's request for help aside. He didn't have time to argue with poplar fruit. How could a child's family be more important than the livelihood of Guangdong province? Fortunately, because of poplar fruit's calm handling, this storm slowly lost its original influence and quickly fell from the trending list. Then, what was the situation with Zheng Mingsheng's warning that Father Li mentioned? Just as Father Li Zichao said, Li Zichao shouldn't have been poisoned. Because Qin Shueishui's situation was more serious, it was exposed by the media. Before that, Zheng Mingsheng naturally found out about the news. When he heard the name Poplar Fruit, who was unintentionally involved, he became curious. After carefully understanding the arrest process, Zheng Mingsheng keenly realized that it wasn't as simple as hiding poison. Then Zheng Mingsheng found out that Li Zichao had come to Guangzhou. He smiled. What? There was no direct evidence that Li Zichao had framed Qin Shueishui? Did big shots need evidence to do things? He only needed to guess this fact. Yes, Zheng Mingsheng threatened the Li family with this guess. Actually, the Li family didn't have to worry. After all, this was just a guess, wasn't it? However, as long as Zheng Mingsheng gave the order to investigate to the end, he would definitely be able to dig out the relationship between Li Zichao and Qin Shueishui. If he continued to investigate, no one could guarantee that Li Zichao hadn't left any clues behind in the process of framing Qin Shueishui. In order to ensure Li Zichao's safety, in order to ensure that nothing would happen during this critical period, Father Li had no choice but to compromise. He had paid a high price, including getting his cousin, who was a deputy director in Guangdong province, to openly support him for at least half a year. The older the ginger, the spicier it was, the older the fox, the more cunning it was. Zheng Mingsheng was the biggest beneficiary of this incident. He even received his daughter's gratitude. Zheng Yujia, who was in a hurry to help the man she liked escape, had not lost her rationality. She did not believe that her father would sacrifice so much to frame Qin Shueishui. She simply thought that her father had sent people to capture Qin Shueishui, but in the end, he had captured such a big drug lord. Poplar Fruit had no idea about all of this. In fact, when Qin Shueishui was captured, many people on the internet were happy for Poplar Fruit. He ignored them and continued to live his life as usual. Of course, he had recently posted a new Weibo post with a photo and 2 words. The photo was of him and Fang Beibei raising their palms and smiling faces, and the 2 words were "We." Chapter 889. It was gradually approaching the end of November. It was getting closer and closer to the day when Poplar Fruit would leave for Beijing to attend the Nobel Prize ceremony. This also meant that Poplar Fruit would have to be separated from Fang Beibei for more than half a month. After all, Fang Beibei still had her own schoolwork. She could not skip class to accompany Poplar Fruit to Sweden. Feeling the sadness of parting, Fang Beibei had been sticking to Poplar Fruit for the past few days. Poplar Fruit was the same. He went to class with his students, Fang Beibei accompanied him, and Fang Beibei went to her undergraduate course. If there was nothing else, Poplar Fruit would bite the bullet and secretly follow them. Of course, Fang Beibei accompanied Poplar Fruit more. After all, Poplar Fruit was a busy person. First, there was a small problem with the remote teaching. It wasn't that their equipment or system wasn't good enough. Everyone was using it well. Moreover, Yang Guo had already finished recording what he thought was the most basic clumsy fist martial arts teaching. Many children in Xiong village would wake up every morning to practice martial arts. However, when they practiced the moves of the Benben fist, they shouted the names of the moves in the novel: 18 dragons subduing palms, and 9 in white bone claw. There was no other way. There was a boy in Jincheng who had learned how to tell stories from his grandfather since he was young. The stories he told them about martial arts novels were too exciting. The situation happened to a Miao child in a nearby mountain village. His father worked in Buddha City, and his leg was broken by a stone at work. All of a sudden, the family had no one to rely on. Not only was his father lying in the hospital, losing his only labor force, but to make matters worse, in order to treat his father's injury, the family had to constantly raise money to pay for the hospital's medical expenses. It was said that his father was disheartened. In order not to drag his family down, he even prepared to jump down from the hospital building. Fortunately, his injured leg was inconvenient, and he was rescued by the doctors and nurses who rushed over. The child's mother had already rushed over to take care of his father, and the child had no intention of going to school. He told the elders that he wanted to go out to work and earn money for the family. But he was only 12 years old. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not sit by and do nothing. On one hand, he contacted Meng Ping, and asked him to help spread the word so that more people would join in and show their love for the child. On the other hand, he also brought Wang Yuba and several lawyers from the legal department that Yao Dehua had given him to go to Buddha City to seek justice for the child's father and mother. Since it was a work injury, they should at least be compensated, right? When Poplar Fruit left Yangcheng for Beijing, the matter was still ongoing. The lawyer was still negotiating with the construction team and the construction company. However, after much persuasion, the child had already returned to class. He temporarily stayed with the Xiongji 5 families. Before his parents returned, there were still elders who took care of him and cared for him. Before the news of this child spread, Poplar Fruit had already prepared to give the 50-seat interpreters of New Translation Road Publishing House a second lesson. Although it was delayed for 2 days because of the child, Poplar Fruit still rushed to give them a day of tutoring before leaving Yangcheng. This time, Poplar Fruit did not talk about pure theory. He combined the students' completion status with their homework and analyzed their shortcomings and strengths. Yes, Poplar Fruit would analyze their strengths. He knew that their weaknesses needed constant effort to slowly make up for them. At the same time, they should not give up on their strengths. They should learn how to transform these strengths into their own characteristics, or to transform them into characteristics that others would like. When I help you perfect or redefine yourselves, I'm actually constantly learning. During the lesson, Poplar Fruit smiled at them. Because when I see you guys, I suddenly realize, oh, so this kind of translation can have such a unique performance. I think you're very lucky, because you can make progress together with 49 equally excellent friends. Among them, you've learned from me, and you've also learned from your friends. Poplar Fruit laughed. Perhaps this is an important meaning of our class. I hope that the next time I see you, you'll be even better. Speaking of the 50-seat interpreters of New Translation Road Publishing House, one had to mention the achievements of New Translation Road Publishing House in the past November. There was no doubt that Old Master Mo Yan's books were selling very well. Riding on the momentum of the Nobel Prize in Literature winner, Yanggua's translations had sold more than 20 million copies worldwide. That was only the sales of physical books in 1 month. Counting the sales of ebooks in the coming year, the sales of ebooks, it would be very impressive. Of course, because the old man was too famous, the publishing house didn't make much money from him. Excluding the share from Amazon, the publishing house and the old man split the profits 30 to 70. Excluding the shares as a translator, Poplar Fruit received 0.5% of the profits. If it were any other author, it wouldn't be so low. In other words, if the price was $15 per book, after deducting the operating expenses and taxes, Poplar Fruit could still get a pre-tax payment of over $5 million. That was just the beginning. Most importantly, the foundation of the future publishing house was web novels. Unexpectedly, the sales of physical books were relatively mediocre, but the sales of ebooks had been showing an exponential growth. Unknowingly, the first 5 web novels on the shelves had received nearly 200,000 ebook downloads. Compared to the 500 sales of a single book last month, it was a great improvement. However, as time passed and new web novel translations were launched by New Translation Road, the momentum of growth didn't slow down. Poplar Fruit received an estimate from Pengyu. It was said that the sales of these 5 books would exceed 500,000 before the end of the year. Note that the 500,000 mentioned here was an average of 500,000 per book. That was real sales data. The copyright protection overseas was so considerate that it was touching. As long as there was a good work, it wasn't impossible for it to be sold out. Of course, the sales of these 5 web novels weren't very equal. Different types of novels had different sales levels. For example, the sales of fantasy novels would be higher than the sales of xianxia novels with strong Oriental culture. Poplar Fruit and Pengyu both noticed this. In the future, they might adjust the trend of publishing books. However, Poplar Fruit didn't really believe in this data. In his opinion, this wasn't fixed. Maybe in the future, everyone would have a deeper understanding of Oriental culture through web novels, and there would be more readers who would like to read xianxia novels. Poplar Fruit came back from the publishing house and casually chatted with Fang Beibei about these things. Fong Beibei even helped him finally calculate how to design the income distribution ratio of the publishing house, authors and translators with great interest. Both of them seemed to be careless and neglected a fact. That was, if they only calculated the share of old Master Mo's works, Poplar Fruit seemed to be almost a billionaire. Chapter 890. In the last few days, Poplar Fruit even brought Kiki and Fong Beibei back to her house. He braced himself and was surrounded by her aunts. Of course, Poplar Fruit was quite happy. After all, at this point, it basically meant that Poplar Fruit had been gradually accepted by Fong Beibei's family. Fong Chio's parents still maintained their last bit of modesty. They were neither cold nor warm to Poplar Fruit. Fong Chio's other relatives were a lot more friendly to Poplar Fruit. The younger generation treated Poplar Fruit as their idol. They pestered him to take photos with them and ask for his autograph. The older generation kept asking about Poplar Fruit's personal information. They were almost like the police doing a background check. In the end, after the relatives went home, Fong Chio's parents finally had time to talk to Poplar Fruit. I heard that you're going to Sweden to attend the Nobel Prize in Literature award ceremony. Fong Chio's father took a sip of the tea that Poplar Fruit made, as if he was just looking for a random topic to talk about. It was unknown who had accidentally heard the news from his daughter. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He was so excited that he couldn't sleep the entire night. Fong Chio's father graduated from Shuemu University. He used to have great ambitions to become an academic. Until now, although he had left the teaching profession for many years, and was getting further and further away from his dream, Fong Chio's father was still looking forward to the academic awards, both in China and abroad. Yes, but my teacher is going to receive the award, Poplar Fruit explained to Fong Chio's father. I'm just going to accompany him. I'll be his simultaneous interpreter. That would be great too. If he could buy an entrance ticket with money, Fong Chio's father would be willing to go to the ceremony. Of course, that was if it wasn't expensive. An English simultaneous interpreter? Fong Chio's father asked curiously. He still didn't understand Poplar Fruit's capabilities. He felt that it was more likely that Poplar Fruit got this opportunity because of his relationship with Mo Yen. Otherwise, how could Mo Yen not find a better interpreter? In Swedish, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Swedish? You know how to do this too? Father Fong asked in surprise. Of course. Of course. He knows more than 10 foreign languages. Fong Beibei said proudly. Fong Beibei talked about her boyfriend's merits in front of her parents like a newly married wife showing off her jewelry. Did you forget? Mother Fong nudged Father Fong and said. It was performed at the Happy Camp. She was talking about the scene where teacher He, Sister Na, and the others were counting how many foreign languages Poplar Fruit knew. Ah. As soon as Mother Fong came back to her senses, Kiki, who was sitting on her lap, pulled her grandmother's hand and opened her mouth to call out. The little girl was like a little bird waiting to be fed, waiting for her grandmother to tear white sugar buns for her to eat. These steamed buns were steamed by Mother Fong herself. She rarely made them, but this time, because Kiki was coming over, she specially steamed a basket of them. The steamed buns were white and plump, soft and fluffy. They looked good. The texture was even better. The white sugar that was kneaded into the flour was sweet but not greasy. It suited Kiki's taste, and it wouldn't cause tooth decay if she ate too much sugar. Kiki loved to eat them. She had just finished one and wanted to eat the second one. Father Fong moved his gaze away from the cute Kiki and continued to say to Poplar Fruit, when you go abroad, you have to be careful. No matter how others provoke you, you have to endure it. You represent the country and the Chinese people when you go abroad. Poplar Fruit nodded seriously. Don't flirt with other girls. Mother Fong snorted and said, you men never change. The women overseas are so open. If Beibei doesn't keep an eye on you, don't go seducing Princess Charlotte. Mother Fong had done her homework during this period. She saw from Qiandu and Qianka that when Poplar Fruit was in Bali, there was a scandal between him and Princess Charlotte. Although a lot of evidence showed that it was fake, Mother Fong still felt uncomfortable. Mother Fong felt that since he was in a relationship with her daughter, he should be more loyal. He shouldn't go around spreading these scandals and acting like a playboy. Yes, yes. Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly. That's all fake. Fong Bebe stood up for her boyfriend and said, the Princess Charlotte thing isn't real. Poplar Fruit doesn't really know him. They only stayed in the same hotel and met twice. This child, she's not even married yet, but she's already protecting that man. Mother Fong rolled her eyes and said unhappily, Bebe, I'm doing this for your own good. You don't know what's good for you. Kiki tried hard to swallow the steamed bun in her mouth, and choked until her eyes rolled back. Mother Fong quickly brought her a cup of hot water, and asked her to drink it down. Mother Fong scolded her. Oh Kiki, why are you in such a hurry? Chew it slowly before swallowing it. Kiki was in a hurry to talk. Once she felt better, she forgot everything and started to chatter. Kiki is also a princess. Princess Sis said that Kiki is also a princess. Mother Fong looked at him strangely as Poplar Fruit scratched his head, and explained the situation on the main stage that day. Kiki was still actively trying to harmonize and tell her grandmother how beautiful that princess sister was. See? Men are like this. Don't look at how honest they are. In reality, you don't know how many things they hide from you. Mother Fong lectured her daughter, not caring that Poplar Fruit was sitting awkwardly in front of her. Fong Bebe covered her mouth and laughed. This time, she wouldn't speak up for Poplar Fruit. After they went back, Fong Bebe started to help Poplar Fruit pack his luggage. However, there was a little troublemaker who was making a fuss. Kiki kept running back and forth in the bedroom and living room. From time to time, she would carry her favorite toys and stuff them into her father's luggage. At first, when Kiki brought her Barbie doll over, Poplar Fruit didn't think much of it. After all, every time he went on a long trip, most of the luggage was filled with his daughter's things. Kiki would be more well-behaved if he brought her 2 favorite toys. However, after a while, Kiki became more and more presumptuous. It seemed that she was going to move all the toys in her toy box. Uncle, tell me about your daughter. Fong Bebe turned her head and saw a plastic elephant falling on her folded clothes. She angrily pushed Poplar Fruit. Enough, enough. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and hugged his daughter to stop her from making a fuss. You can't carry so many toys. Kiki can carry them. The little girl proudly rolled up her sleeves like her father, revealing her white and tender arms. Last time, when she pushed the luggage, the little girl felt that she could do anything. It was not easy for Poplar Fruit to persuade the little girl. He stripped Kiki naked and took her to the bathroom to take a bath. Just as Poplar Fruit and Fong Bebe were enjoying the last 2 days of Poplar Fruit's warm time at home before he went on a business trip, in a corner of Yangcheng, someone was brewing resentment, and was going to give them a fatal attack. He was not Li Zichao. Chapter 891. The plane flew through the heat of late autumn in Yangcheng and arrived at Beijing, which was already covered in ice and snow. When they got out of the plane, although there was heating in the room, Yanghua hurriedly helped Chi-Chi put on a thick down jacket when she saw the snowy scenery outside the window. You have to wear a scarf too. Zhang Yujie took off her own scarf and helped Kiki put it on. She said, if you don't wear a scarf in Beijing, Kiki will catch a cold. It was Kiki's first time coming to the north in winter, and so was Poplar Fruit. He had never come here in such a cold season before, so he and Fong Bebe did not think it through. Kiki is a penguin, a fat penguin. Kiki was originally very uncomfortable being wrapped up, but after she put on all the clothes and scarf, she looked at herself in the mirror next to her and jumped up happily. She really walked like a penguin, swaying back and forth. She felt that she was very cute. Poplar Fruit smiled and carried Kiki up. He said, okay, stop playing. It's getting late. Let's go back to the hotel early. We still have to get up early tomorrow. Zhang Yujie grabbed Poplar Fruit's arm and pointed at him in surprise. You're going to wear this? Zhang Yujie didn't wear much today. Although her coat was very long and could cover her thighs, it was very hot inside. Her upper body was a curvy turtleneck sweater, and her lower body was light and long pantyhose. She was very confident in her figure and beauty. Of course, this outfit showed off her sexy figure incisively and vividly. In the big environment of the airport, Zhang Yujie looked beautiful and cold. But compared to Poplar Fruit, it was nothing. Poplar Fruit was wearing a short-sleeved shirt and a sleeveless jacket. His trousers were casual, but they were the summer kind. He did not wear the down jacket that Fang Beibei had prepared for him. "Don't worry, I'm not cold," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Zheng Yujie looked at the down jacket in Poplar Fruit's hands and snorted. "Don't catch a cold and can't go to Sweden." The down jacket was bright in color, which was not Poplar Fruit's style. She could guess who had bought it for him. Ahem. Poplar Fruit felt guilty. Recently, his relationship with Fang Beibei had caused such a big disturbance on the internet. He did not believe that Zheng Yujie did not see it. However, it seemed that the other party did not want to mention it. Poplar Fruit was also smart enough not to mention it. Poplar Fruit's guilt was not that he had done anything wrong to Zheng Yujie. It was just that he thought that Zheng Yujie was so devoted to him, but he did not accept it. He even started to secretly, with Fang Beibei. Thinking about it made him feel guilty. However, Poplar Fruit did not want to reveal this matter. Because of this, he might not be able to be friends with Zheng Yujie. Zheng Yujie did not accompany Poplar Fruit for long. She rushed back to the company and stood on the last shift. Speaking of which, Poplar Fruit's last translation in Xindao was finally published. Last week, on November 22nd, the day after Poplar Fruit defeated the internet rumors, the book and the movie went on sale at the same time. The success of Li An's movie was beyond doubt. Even the impact of Poplar Fruit's popularity was negligible. On the contrary, Poplar Fruit's translation was promoted by the movie. The moment it went on sale, it became a big hit. Only a week had passed, and it had already sold more than 500,000 copies. However, this only represented the success of Poplar Fruit. In terms of profits, no matter how well it sold, it had nothing to do with Poplar Fruit. When Dongxin Publishing first handed in the manuscript, they had already bought out Poplar Fruit's translation at a price of 160,000 yuan. Zheng Yujie helped him get that price. Otherwise, with Poplar Fruit's status at that time, he could only get about 100,000 yuan at most. The money he earned was shared between Dongxin and the author. The translators who worked hard could only look at it and sigh. Compared to the huge profit that Poplar Fruit earned from New Translation Road Publishing House, what Dongxin gave him was way too little. Of course, Mr. Mo Yen and Poplar Fruit were both phenomenons. If it were other translators or other authors, they might not be able to earn that much money. However, as long as they could translate works that foreign readers liked, it was possible for them to earn hundreds of thousands of yuan per book. And it was not a one-time deal. In the future, the translators would continue to earn money. In the future, more translators will live a good life. Poplar Fruit clenched his fists. Poplar Fruit didn't want to pull all translators under the banner of New Translation Road. He didn't have that ambition. Poplar Fruit had worked so hard to get the preferential treatment from New Translation Road Publishing House, because he wanted to use New Translation Road as a starting point to bring about a revolution in the whole industry. New Translation Road Publishing House was a disruptor. They might cause the whole publishing industry to attack them. However, they weren't afraid, because they were walking on the path of self-publishing and online marketing, which was rarely explored by anyone. As long as the other publishing companies couldn't accept the protest or even the escape of their translators, they would be forced to make changes. Whether the changes could reach the standard of New Translation Road Publishing House or not, it would be good news for translators who were engaged in literature translation. Poplar Fruit spent a great deal of effort to persuade Peng Yu. In the end, he even shared 3/4 of his 20% share as compensation to the publishing house. In the end, Peng Yu agreed to his proposal. It could be said that if Poplar Fruit was black-hearted, he could earn more. However, this wasn't good for the progress of the entire translation industry. It was also not good for the long-term development of the publishing house. He didn't tell anyone about this, except for Fang Beibei. However, Fang Beibei didn't mind. He didn't need other people's support and gratitude. Poplar Fruit only hoped that one day, he could see the glory of literature translation. Poplar Fruit still remembered the news he watched with Secretary Chen Longjiang when he returned home at the end of April. Translators must be brave enough to take on the responsibility of promoting Chinese culture. However, Secretary Chen also reminded him that this should be his goal. Regardless of whether the country supported it or not, The strength of the literature translation team would have a positive impact on the spread of Chinese culture. Poplar Fruit hoped that one day, Chinese culture would also be able to reach the peak of the world again. Not only would it be accepted by the world, but it would also firmly occupy an important position. It wouldn't be like now, where young people watched American movies, Korean soap operas, and Japanese cartoons. And there wouldn't be any Chinese culture in the entire market. It could be done. Poplar Fruit firmly believed that this was not a dream. Even if he was just a small member of this huge enterprise, just a small stepping stone, Poplar Fruit was willing to work hard and fight for it. Chapter 892. Achoo! Kiki twitched violently, and then lazily lay back in her father's arms. Her little nose was red, and she was dizzy as if she had drunk a few glasses of wine. It seemed that she was not used to the dry and cold weather in Beijing. Although she only played outdoors in the snow for a few minutes, Kiki caught a cold. The little girl had not been sick for a long time. This time, her illness dragged on for a long time and did not seem to get better. In order to see his daughter, Poplar Fruit carried her to the hospital in the middle of the night to line up. Of course, he was reprimanded by Wuxia, who came later. She used her connections to get Poplar Fruit to see the doctor in a few minutes. The doctor told Poplar Fruit that the child was fine. She just needed to be exposed to less wind, play outside less, drink more hot water, and get better nutrition. The doctor also said that Kiki's physical fitness was better than that of ordinary children. If she did not take medicine, she would be able to cultivate her body's immunity. Probably because of Wuxia's connections, the doctor did not prescribe a single pill and let Poplar Fruit go back. This was really a rare situation in modern society. It was known that hospitals sucked blood. Not to mention children. Even adults who had a small cold would be prescribed a basket of medicine to take home. It was estimated that the person would be fine, but would be stuffed to death by the medicine. However, Kiki's illness brought another problem. Poplar Fruit had to take care of her. Wuxia wanted to replace Poplar Fruit, but Poplar Fruit decisively refused. Not to mention that this sister was busier than him. Even if she was not busy, Poplar Fruit did not want this careless person to take care of his daughter. She could not even take care of herself. How could she be expected to take care of others? It was not good to find a part-time worker or a confinement nanny to help. First of all, Kiki would not accept strangers. Second, Poplar Fruit was not at ease. Recently, there had been a lot of shocking news about nannies not paying attention to children who had climbed into washing machines and suffocated to death. In order to take care of his daughter, Poplar Fruit tried to apply to the person in charge of daily affairs abroad, who was a leader of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to see if he could reduce the training time, or let him take Kiki to the classroom to participate in the training. However, they were all rejected by the leader. He actually scolded Poplar Fruit. Which is more important, the country's affairs or a 3-year-old child? A 3-year-old child, my child. What does national affairs have to do with me? Poplar Fruit was furious, but he did not argue with the leader. He carried Kiki to the classroom. He turned around and looked at the leader coldly. Then, he looked at the Swedish teacher from Beijing University, who was going to train the leaders and translators who would accompany him to Sweden. Hello, teacher. Poplar Fruit was still very polite, but he was neither servile nor overbearing as he said, "This matter, I am not targeting you. I just wanted to apply for leave to take care of my daughter who has a cold, but directorly didn't allow it. So, I want to prove a point." "Do I, Poplar Fruit, still need to listen to your training?" Poplar Fruit said loudly. His meaning was clear. "Let's compete. If you are better than me, then I have nothing to say. But if I am better than you, then why should I waste my time listening to your lessons?" The leader with the surname Li came over and scolded Poplar Fruit for being undisciplined. Poplar Fruit only glanced at him coldly. He was not interested in wasting time with him. "Director Li, it doesn't matter. Let's compete, and we can understand each other better. If Poplar Fruit is better, then he doesn't need to participate in my training. If I'm better, then I can understand where Yanggua's level is and come up with a better teaching plan," the teacher from Beijing University said with an open-minded smile. For the past month, who had not heard of Poplar Fruit's name, the students and teachers of Beijing University We're all talking about Poplar Fruit's real level. Poplar Fruit's English was very good. He was also good at French and Spanish. But he had never shown his Swedish, so he was very curious. All right, Teacher Han. You can compete with this little colleague. The few of us will be the judges. A big-bellied leader, who was higher in rank than Director Lee, stopped Director Lee from making trouble. Thank you for your understanding, teachers. Poplar Fruit bowed and said, My daughter is sick. This is an urgent matter. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me. Yang Guo had always pursued the principle of keeping a low profile and doing things in a low profile. Although there was a saying to be low-key, but Poplar Fruit felt that low-key was the only way to make life simple, pure, and happy. Previously, when he participated in the Flash Dungeon, it was because he was too high profile. That was why there were so many discussions and even criticisms from the netizens. However, at this time, Poplar Fruit did not want to be low-key anymore. He had to be high profile and release all his abilities. He had to show his best in order to convince Teacher Han, who was from Beijing University, the best university in the country. How good was Poplar Fruit when he went all out? If one was not there in person, it would be impossible to explain it clearly with words alone. Poplar Fruit's spoken English was better than many native Swedish speakers. His knowledge of Swedish was not as deep as many native Swedish professors. Therefore, Teacher Han, who was still a normal person, was defeated when Poplar Fruit started to explain the details of ancient Norse to him. Not only did he win in terms of language, but Teacher Han's understanding of Swedish culture was also on par with Poplar Fruit's. This was supposed to be the content of the training. Teacher Han had studied in Sweden before, so he knew more about it. Reading 10,000 books was not as good as traveling 10,000 miles. However, sometimes if one read too many books, walking 10,000 miles might not be able to compete with it. Although Poplar Fruit had never been to Sweden, he had read a lot of books. When Poplar Fruit was talking about Swedish history, Teacher Han sighed and said, There's no need to compete. Poplar Fruit, you are more suitable to be the training teacher than me. Of course, Poplar Fruit did not take over Teacher Han's position. He only wanted to spend time with and take care of his daughter. If he became the teacher, then what was the point of this competition? I was wondering why Teacher Mo insisted on stuffing you in. A local leader laughed and said, It turns out that he is not taking care of the younger generation through the back door. He has already found a treasure. Old Lu, you are ignorant and inexperienced, aren't you? Another local leader laughed and said, Poplar Fruit is a genius translator. Almost all of the books that Teacher Mo sold overseas were translated by Poplar Fruit. He is a young talent. Poplar Fruit won the approval of all the leaders present, and won his precious freedom. Although Director Lee still hated Poplar Fruit, he could only keep quiet. Teacher Han laughed and said, Poplar Fruit, if you are not going to teach for me, then go do what you are supposed to do. If you stand in front of me, I won't feel comfortable teaching. Chapter 893. Just like that, Poplar Fruit stayed with Kiki in the hotel for 5 days. During that time, Kiki's cold relapsed. On the third day, it was especially serious. Her muddy nose water kept flowing out, and Poplar Fruit had to wipe it for her every few minutes. If he had known that Kiki would suffer in the capital, he would have chosen to come a few days later and try to stay in the capital for as little as possible. Feng Beibei was also worried. Seeing Kiki's dispirited look, she even wanted to fly to the capital to take care of the little girl. However, Poplar Fruit comforted his girlfriend and told her that Kiki was actually in good health. She was just fighting against the virus. After this experience, she wouldn't catch a cold so easily next time. Indeed, Poplar Fruit went to see the doctor again. The doctor's conclusion was exactly the same as last time. Feng Qiu's parents also got the news. The two elders were as anxious as if their own child was sick. They looked everywhere for folk remedies for Kiki. Poplar Fruit promised with a bitter smile, but turned his head and didn't try it. Are you kidding me? These folk remedies had no known effects. How could he let his daughter try them? The old man's kindness was appreciated, but he couldn't follow him blindly. Poplar Fruit had a good idea. He used his internal strength to strengthen Kiki's body. He named this method marrow cleansing and meridians changing. However, this method consumed too much internal strength. Poplar fruit massaged Kiki for half an hour, and he himself had to spend a day to recover. Of course, the effect was obvious. Kiki's spirit was obviously much better. Moreover, the illness probably consumed a lot of energy. Recently, Kiki's appetite had increased greatly. She could eat 2 big bowls of sandworm porridge and amaranth porridge every meal. Don't worry, the child should be growing taller. Mo Yin came to the capital 3 days before the departure. He came to visit his disciple's daughter at night, and said with a smile, "I think so too." Yang Guo laughed. "But you've been sick for too long. My heart aches just looking at you." It was mainly because her nose was bright red from wiping her nose, just like a small brandy nose. Kiki is fun. The little fellow tossed and turned on the bed. After a while, she raised her messy little head and giggled. "Talking is so funny." "What do you mean?" Mo Yin looked at Poplar Fruit with confusion. He didn't know what Kiki was talking about. She was talking about her own voice. After she caught a cold, her nose was stuffed, so her voice was muffled. It was different from usual, so she thought it was fun. Poplar Fruit laughed. Now the little guy was singing and dancing again. However, after playing around for a while, she was soon tired. Kiki lazily flipped over on the bed, panting slightly. Yang Guo stretched out her hand and helped her pull up her clothes, covering the white and bulging belly that was exposed when the clothes rolled up. Ha 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 ha. Kiki thought that her father was going to tickle her. The little fellow panicked and grabbed her father's big hand, rolling and screaming. She was like a little rabbit, nimbly burrowing into the warm bedding. A small head with fluffy hair poked out, smiling brightly. "Teacher, look at her. She's so naughty." Poplar Fruit said to Mo Yin with a smile. "She doesn't look like a sick child. She's so energetic." "That's a good thing. It means she's going to recover soon." Old Master Mo laughed happily. Thanks to Old Master Mo's auspicious words, on the last day before the departure, Kiki finally recovered. Her nose was no longer stuffed, nor was it runny. She didn't even sneeze anymore. After Old Mo had come to visit Chi-Chi once, he had been busy socializing everywhere for the past few days. It was said that he had even met with the new #1 chief once. Finally, Poplar Fruit had to pack up and prepare to fly to Sweden with the team. After that experience, Poplar Fruit specially checked the weather of Sweden on the internet. That country was in northern Europe, close to the Arctic Circle. The climate there was probably even colder than the capital. Therefore, Poplar Fruit went out and bought a few more clothes with better cold resistance. He changed into them from inside to outside. After all, the down jackets sold in the shops in the north were more authentic. At least, when wrapped around the body, one would feel warm all over, unlike the ones brought by Poplar Fruit, which always had a few small gaps. Before leaving, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie went out for supper. During the day, she was so busy that she didn't have any friends. Without Kiki with them, Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie ate barbecue outside in the cold wind and drank wanglaji. Poplar Fruit didn't drink, and he didn't let Zheng Yujie drink either. "Have you submitted your resignation application?" Poplar Fruit asked as he chewed on a grilled sausage. "Yes, the secretary approved it very quickly," Zheng Yujie said with some annoyance. "Anyway, I'm just a deputy editor. If I quit, there will be a bunch of people waiting to replace me. So they have found a successor for you?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Yes," Zheng Yujie snorted and said. "I haven't left yet, but he comes to my office every day and points at me, as if this is his territory." "You remember my assistant, right?" Poplar Fruit nodded. Zheng Yujie continued. "She was picked on by that disgusting guy and scolded. If I hadn't met her when I came back, the little girl would have cried." "Didn't you say that you would take her with you?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "Yes, take them all." Zheng Yujie waved her hand domineeringly and said, "I just wave my sleeves and leave no clouds behind." "Ha!" Poplar Fruit was so happy that he raised his head and laughed. The feeling of being with Zheng Yujie was completely different from being with Feng Beibei. Feng Beibei gave Poplar Fruit a feeling of love, pure, warm, and sweet love. Of course, this love also had a tendency to sublimate toward family affection. But Zheng Yujie was different. She was like Poplar Fruit's confidant. They knew each other and gave each other the greatest support. It was far from love, but it was more than the mutual appreciation of ordinary friends. However, Zheng Yujie was more emotional than rational to Poplar Fruit, while Poplar Fruit was more rational than emotional to Zheng Yujie. He didn't dare to cross the final line, which was a good thing for both of them, at least in Poplar Fruit's opinion. Will the handover last for a month? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. No, Zheng Yujie said disdainfully. Dongxin is such a big publishing house. It's not like it can't survive without me. I'll finish the handover this week, and next week I won't go to that disgusting place and see that disgusting person. That's good, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. You can rest for the rest of the time. You don't have to be as tired as a dog every day. Before you go to New Translation Road, give yourself a good vacation. Or go out for a vacation. Zheng Yujie shook her head and said with a smile. That's not necessarily true. Now New Translation Road is in a critical period of development, and they need people urgently. Maybe you can see me in Yangcheng when you come back from Sweden. Chapter 894. The group flew to the faraway northern Europe and entered Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. It was a beautiful city with an average annual temperature of less than 7 degrees. I heard that the population of Sweden is smaller than that of Beijing. Reporter Xiaozhang from People's Daily smiled at Poplar Fruit, who was looking out of the window with his daughter in one hand. They were staying in a hotel in Stockholm. The leaders and Professor Mo Yin had their own rooms. The accompanying staff members, including the reporters, were all mixed up in a room. Poplar Fruit was supposed to have a room with his daughter. However, he was also assigned a double room with reporter Xiaozhang, probably because he had offended Director Li in Beijing. Yanghua smiled and said, Yes, but the welfare of their country is good, and the quality of life is not something we can compare with. Poplar Fruit didn't plan to argue with Director Li. He also didn't plan to leave the group and pay for a big suite. Although it felt good to be slapped in the face if he made a scene outside, it would still be a disgrace to the people of Sweden. Reporter Xiaozhang was actually a nice person. She was warm and generous. Seeing Poplar Fruit with his daughter, she wanted to help him with his luggage. After entering the room, she chatted with Poplar Fruit, worried that Poplar Fruit would feel uncomfortable. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. It was a staff member, the secretary of a leader. She smiled and said, Xiaozhang, are you ready? If you don't want to rest, why don't you go out with us? The leader said that since we are here, we should walk around. Okay. I want to go. Reporter Xiaozhang happily picked up the camera on the table, raised it, and pretended to make a click sound. Poplar Fruit, do you want to go? Reporter Xiaozhang put down the camera and asked while putting on her clothes. Okay, let's go. Poplar Fruit twisted his arms and said with a smile. He picked up the down jacket from the bedside and prepared to put it on Kiki. Oh, I'm going to get fat again. Kiki pouted. Because it was too cold outside, Kiki was wrapped up like a small ball after getting off the plane. It was inconvenient for her to move, so she had to rely on her father to carry her. When they reached the room, she was finally able to relax for a while. Just a moment ago, she had been jumping around on the big bed. Now that she had to wear heavy clothes again, Kiki was very unhappy. It's fine if you don't want to go, Reporter Little Zhang said worriedly. If it's inconvenient for you, I can go by myself. He wasn't worried about the language barrier. Firstly, he could speak English. Secondly, in addition to the translator from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the embassy here had also sent someone to guide them. It's fine. It's boring to stay cooped up in the hotel. Let's go out for a walk. Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki and said with a smile, Kiki, don't become fat. Kiki was still whining and acting like a spoiled child. Then do you want to catch a cold and cry all day long? Poplar Fruit pondered and even put a small hat on his daughter's head. Fortunately, he didn't agree to Zara's request for Kiki to be the spokesperson. Although they had come to Guangzhou to persuade Poplar Fruit, if he agreed, then he probably wouldn't be able to let Poplar Fruit match Kiki to his heart's desire. Although Zara's children's clothing was fashionable and beautiful, Fashion sometimes sacrificed protection from the cold. The child was too young, and she wasn't like Zheng Yujia, who could do whatever she wanted in Beijing with just a pair of tights. When they went out, they followed the group for sightseeing. The embassy had even chartered a double-decker bus for them to sit on and enjoy the scenery. Poplar Fruit and reporter Little Zhang did not go up to the second floor because it was filled with leaders. Furthermore, the wind was strong, causing their faces to turn green. There are so many trees. Kiki leaned on the window and greedily looked at the snow-covered trees outside. Grandpa Shushu is so old, even his hair is white. Haha. Poplar Fruit laughed and did not correct his daughter's wrong idea. It was good to have such imagination. Sigh, Stockholm's greenery is really well done. Reporter Little Zhang sighed. It feels like the entire city is located in a forest. No wonder the United Nations Climate Change Conference was held here. Ahem. Poplar Fruit coughed and softly corrected. That's Copenhagen, not Stockholm. Is that so? Haha, I'm not good at my studies. Reporter Little Zhang and Poplar Fruit looked at each other and laughed. Stockholm has always had a close connection with trees. Poplar Fruit explained to him. The name Stockholm means wood, and Holmo means island. There is such a story, that is, the people who moved here in the past picked up drifting wood from the sea. Perhaps it was because pirates or the wind and waves broke the ship's debris, so they used the wood to build the earliest houses, Poplar Fruit said. So Stockholm is called Wooden Island? Reporter Xiaozhang said with a sudden realization. During the early days of immigration, the conditions were tough. Not to mention the simple houses, many people did not even have clothes to wear. Weren't the first few groups of immigrants from the United States the representatives of the pioneers? Looking at the current Stockholm, it was completely like a modern international metropolis, and the simple houses only existed in the photos in the museum. The main thing is that the wood is uneven, so the houses built are weird and not orderly at all. It's even uglier than the shanty towns in our city. Poplar Fruit laughed. When a foreign ship docked, someone came over to take a look and felt that it was similar, so they could not help but blurt out, "Oh, Woodhead Island. That's why Stockholm is being called out like this." Oh, Stockholm. Kiki let go of the hands that were holding the window railing, sat on her father's lap, and giggled while imitating her father's Swedish accent. Although she did not imitate it completely, her tone and intonation were still the same. You imitate it so well. Reporter Little Zhang looked at Kiki enviously and said, Kiki must have inherited Poplar Fruit's language talent. Earlier in the hotel room, he wanted to know where the hotel TV remote control was. It was Poplar Fruit who called the hotel front desk and asked. His fluent Swedish shocked him. The first impression that Poplar Fruit gave people was that he was more like an entertainment star after all. Reporter Little Zhang stretched out his right index finger, wanting to tease Kiki, but was caught by Kiki. Her small palm was just enough to hold his little finger. Reporter Little Zhang suddenly felt that the winter in Stockholm was wrapped in gentleness and warmth. She learns things very quickly, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Now she can speak English and French fluently. I saw your daughter. Reporter Little Zhang sighed. I can't wait to go back to China immediately and discuss with my wife that I want a child this year, and also a daughter. Isn't it all up to fate to give birth to a boy or a girl? Poplar Fruit laughed. But if we really give birth to a daughter, then she will have to call Kiki sister. Kiki blinked her big eyes and said happily. Does Kiki have a sister again? The little girl often called others sister and brother, but until now, she only had one sister. Chapter 895. The people from the embassy were really good. The double-decker bus tour was very interesting. They didn't need to look for places on the map, and they didn't need to use their feet to measure the land of Stockholm. It was comfortable, and they could even enjoy the beautiful scenery. It was not known how the leaders felt when they sat in the cold wind. Maybe they felt cold and happy at the same time. However, Poplar Fruit, Kiki and reporter Xiaozhang chatted happily as they enjoyed the scenery on the first floor. Although Poplar Fruit had never been to Sweden and had never seen these scenic spots, he could recognize the Swedish language on the road signs. He had read a lot of books, so he knew all kinds of stories and anecdotes at his fingertips. He played the role of a tour guide along the way. Kiki and reporter Xiaozhang were not only fascinated by him, but also listened with great interest. Reporter Xiaozhang was even more interesting. He took out his notebook and took notes as he listened. According to him, these could be used as material for his report. He was indeed a professional reporter. Xiaoyang, Xiaoyang. Suddenly, the local leader with the surname Lu called from the front. Poplar Fruit and reporter Xiaozhang looked at each other and hurried over with their daughter. Xiaoyang. Leader Lu smiled and said to Poplar Fruit, "Come and talk to this driver. Just now, our leader said that he wanted to go to Sergel Square. Isn't that the Venice of Northern Europe? But it seems that translator Xiao Deng can't communicate with him." Translator Xiao Deng was the translator from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who accompanied them today. His Swedish was actually not bad, but it was academic. Poplar Fruit felt that the people from the embassy were better than him. It was winter. He wiped his sweat and complained to Poplar Fruit. Maybe he is not a local in this century. The dialect is too strong. I can't understand. There was also such a possibility. Sweden was not a big country, but there were still some dialects, and these dialects had evolved from the ancient Norse language, the predecessor of Swedish. They were very different from the labeled Swedish in terms of grammar and vocabulary. Some of them could not even be called Swedish anymore. Nowadays, fewer and fewer people were using these dialects, but that didn't change their existence. When Poplar Fruit was learning Swedish, he had some understanding of these non-mainstream dialects. Because there were many scholars who studied them in depth, they provided a lot of information for Poplar Fruit. However, this was all in theory. In terms of speaking, Poplar Fruit had not heard many dialects, so he was not much better than the translator, Little Deng. He could only give it a try. Poplar Fruit went up and spoke to the driver. Yonghua frowned when she heard him say the first string of words in Swedish with a thick voice and a thick tongue. Unlike the translator, Xiao Deng was mainly listening to the pronunciation, so he couldn't understand. However, Poplar Fruit was listening to the grammar. Poplar Fruit was surprised to find that although the driver's accent was a bit difficult to understand, the structure of his speech was still standard Swedish. It could be said that although the driver's speech was full of mistakes, he was still walking in the right direction. Moreover, Poplar Fruit had another discovery that he wasn't very sure of. Therefore, he tried to change his accent to communicate with the driver. Then, Poplar Fruit heard the pronunciation that he wanted to hear. Poplar Fruit smiled. He understood why Xiao Deng couldn't communicate with the driver. It was like a Chinese person communicating with a Korean or Japanese person in English. The Chinese people had their own Chinglish accent, and the Korean or Japanese people had their own unique pronunciation. When compared, it felt like the two of them were not speaking the same language. The difference was huge, and neither of them could understand what the other was saying. That's right. Not only was the driver not a local, he wasn't even born and raised in Sweden. Poplar Fruit didn't know what nationality the driver was currently, but Poplar Fruit knew that he might have been a Portuguese in the past or even now. Portuguese and Spanish belonged to the Romance languages. They were of two different origins from the Germanic languages that Swedish belonged to. The Swedish he spoke had a Portuguese accent, and even grammatical habits, while the translator, Xiao Deng, spoke Chinese. Both of them could understand standard Swedish, but when they heard each other's words, it was as if they were speaking a completely different language. They were confused and couldn't tell the difference. Poplar Fruit Swedish, as well as the embassy staff who had sent them to the car but had to leave midway, were all speaking standard Swedish. The driver could understand them, but it was more difficult for him to answer. As expected, Poplar Fruit switched to Portuguese to communicate with the driver, and the driver immediately laughed. He shook hands with Poplar Fruit and said loudly, "Haha, that's great. I can finally express myself comfortably." Poplar Fruit chatted with him for a while, then told him that they wanted to transfer to Selgel Square. The driver immediately agreed. However, they were currently on King's Island. If they wanted to change their route to Staten Island, they would have to recalculate the charter fee. Poplar Fruit told Leader Lu about this problem, and Leader Lu waved his hand generously and said, "Tell him that money is not a problem." So, Poplar Fruit told the driver where they were going, then shook hands with him. The bus that was parked by the roadside slowly started to move again. Xiaoyang is still the best. Leader Lu introduced him to a few leaders who had come down to watch. He laughed and said, "He can even speak the dialect so well. No wonder Teacher Han said that he can't beat Xiaoyang." Grandpa Emo folded his hands and smiled. His disciple was praised, so he was embarrassed to say anything. "Xiaodang, did you hear that? You have to learn more from Poplar Fruit in the future." The leader of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs felt embarrassed. He pointed at the translator, Xiaodang, and educated him. "Languages are the same. There's no end to learning. Not only do you have to learn Swedish well, you have to learn the dialect like Xiaoyang. Otherwise, how can you deal with a situation like today's?" Xiaodang nodded his head submissively. His expression was extremely awkward. With a bitter smile, Yang cupped his hands and said, "Leaders, please don't flatter me. There's a misunderstanding here. The driver didn't speak the dialect. He's only speaking Swedish. He's not as good as Xiaodang. Just now, I was communicating with him in Portuguese." Xiaodang was stunned. He looked at Poplar Fruit gratefully. He felt that Poplar Fruit had helped him out. At least, it wasn't his fault anymore. He couldn't understand Portuguese, so it was his fault. Poplar Fruit didn't understand the twists and turns of officialdom. He was just telling the truth. However, his explanation made the officials feel that Poplar Fruit was amazing. They all said, "Xiaoyang can speak Portuguese so fluently? That's amazing." There were even leaders who suggested that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs recruit Poplar Fruit. However, this was just a joke. Not to mention whether they were willing to recruit an outsider. Even if they invited him, Poplar Fruit wouldn't agree. Chapter 896. After Old Master Emo landed in Sweden, the news in the country also rushed to report on him. Not only the People's Daily, but many other media outlets also sent reporters to Sweden. In Old Master Mo's team, other than him and his family, the person who received the most attention was Poplar Fruit, who had become famous the previous month. There was always a small group of people who looked at all the problems with a doubtful gaze. Even though Poplar Fruit had been confirmed by many reports and experts, they still felt that if Poplar Fruit could attend the Nobel Prize award ceremony at such a young age, he must have gotten in through the back door. Therefore, discussions about Poplar Fruit's family background began to emerge again. Some people guessed that Poplar Fruit was lying when he said that he was born in a rural area. In fact, Poplar Fruit's ancestors were all famous people. His father was a high-ranking government official, and his mother was a tycoon. Even if Poplar Fruit's hometown had to produce a certificate to prove Poplar Fruit's family background, it could not stop the malicious speculation. However, this did not cause much of a stir. Compared to the later matter, it was simply a small matter. What kind of girl was Fang Beibei? Why was there such a discussion? This story had to start from when Yang Guo had yet to leave the country. When Gan Juanji saw the overwhelming news about Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei, he finally understood. It turned out that Fang Beibei did not see his true colors, nor was it because their feelings for each other had faded over time. It was because this bitch fell in love with someone else and changed her mind. Because of this, Gan Juanji ran out and found 2 female university students to have a threesome. This could not offset the jealousy in his heart. When he saw Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei sweetly showing off the love rings on their fingers, Gan Juanji went crazy and smashed his computer. What was even worse was that when he went out to have sex, the image of Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei popped up in his mind again. This made him wilt. This was not the first or second time. Once, when Gan Juanji went to wash his feet, he was ridiculed by his friends for having weak kidneys. How could Gan Juanji not be mad with anger? As long as this matter was not resolved, Gan Juanji felt that he would not be able to return to his blissful life. However, compared to Li Zichao, whom he did not know, Gan Juanji was still considered calm and had a bit of a brain. He didn't need to find Qin Shueishue's online promoter to help him. He could plan it himself and come up with a vicious idea on his own. In order to achieve the best results for his plan, Gan Juanji chose to endure. He endured it until Poplar Fruit went abroad in December. During this period, Qin Shueishue's accident and public opinion's doubts about poplar fruit turned into praise. It could not change the perverted thoughts in Gan Juanji's heart. Therefore, he finally waited for the moment when poplar fruit left. When Gan Juanji saw the news of poplar fruit's arrival in Stockholm, he couldn't wait to turn on his computer and send out the message that he had already written. He even used his own Weibo. Feng Beibei is very pure? Bullshit, poplar fruit. Let me tell you, she's just a piece of trash that I'm tired of playing with. Gan Juanji proudly posted a photo of himself and Feng Beibei when they were in a puppy relationship in junior high school. He even pretended to not care and was just showing off to his friends. Hee idiots, tell me, did I fuck a celebrity? Although a few years have passed, the feeling at that time was really unforgettable. Girl, let's have another round. Do you want to go on a date? Although this photo was taken 6 years ago, Gan Juanji's camera was high-end. People could still recognize that the young girl in the photo was Feng Beibei. This photo actually didn't mean anything. Even the most intimate one was the two of them holding hands and sitting side by side on the stone bench of the football field in the evening. However, people didn't need to analyze whether this photo, which wasn't considered a super photo, was a cover to fool people. Because everyone only needed to know that this goddess, who was once the purest in everyone's hearts, was also held by someone else. As for whether the rest was really bitten by a dog, that was really a matter of opinion. However, many people were too lazy to think about this level. Gan Juanji's Weibo was quickly forwarded, screenshotted, and so on. In any case, this comment quickly spread on the internet. The photo was irrefutable evidence. Even many so-called PS masters couldn't find any traces of PS. Combined with Gan Juanji's Weibo over the years, people found that this rich second generation not only liked to show off his wealth, but also liked to show off the women he had slept with. The number of women that appeared in his graphic Weibo was beyond people's imagination. And now, Feng Beibei appeared. People couldn't help but have wild and fanciful thoughts. They couldn't help but start to believe this truth. Some people on the internet were angry. They were angry that they had misjudged him before. Some people gloated and thought that poplar fruit was a pick-up hero who only took other people's second-hand goods. There were also some poplar fruit or Kiki fans who lost their minds and jumped out to scold Feng Beibei. Trash, get out of Higashiyama University. Get out of my handsome, gentle, considerate, and invincible Appa's side. In the end, most people on the internet were irrational. Other than a few people who could think for themselves and could tell that Gan Juanji's Weibo was more fake than real. And there wasn't any concrete evidence to prove that Feng Beibei was as bad as he said. Everyone else was scolding and attacking Feng Beibei. Feng Beibei was met with supercilious looks in school. A few female students from other colleges even came to her door and scolded her. Fortunately, Feng Beibei was protected by Lin Xingshan and the other roommates, as well as the boys in her class, so nothing happened to her. She went home crying. Then this time, she didn't feel afraid alone. She remembered poplar fruit's instructions. No matter what time it was in Sweden, she called poplar fruit. Poplar fruit's phone wasn't turned off for her, and it wasn't out of service either. Not long after, poplar fruit picked up. Sob sob uncle. Feng Beibei's sobbing voice transmitted her grievances to poplar fruit's ears from 1,000 miles away. After asking what happened, poplar fruit crushed the pen in his hand. It wasn't broken, nor was it broken. The hard pen was crushed into pieces by poplar fruit's right hand. Gan Juanji, you deserve to die. At this moment, poplar fruit wished he was in Yangcheng. Poplar fruit's violent mood didn't affect Feng Beibei. He returned to his normal self and comforted his girlfriend again and again, telling her that he believed that it wasn't the case. Feng Beibei wasn't safe at this time. Some irrational netizens were crazy. Poplar fruit called Chen Anlin and asked her to go to school to protect Feng Beibei on his behalf. Everything else could wait until poplar fruit came back from Sweden. Damn it. There's still a week before he goes back. Chapter 897. After putting down the phone, poplar fruit did not hesitate and took out his phone. He first carefully understood the dirty water that Gan Juanji had slandered, then wrote a Weibo post. It was both a counterattack and to clarify and support Fang Beibei. First of all, it was my fault for not being by your side at that time. Secondly, I want to thank Beibei's parents and her middle school class teacher. You chased away the bad guys and protected the ignorant Beibei. It was just a young first love. Who doesn't have a past like that? I have one too. Pain makes people grow. Beibei, I didn't have time to participate in your past, but please rest assured that I will protect your future. Poplar Fruit was rarely domineering. He even had the arrogance of grabbing the collars of all the people who attacked Fang Beibei to declare his sovereignty over Fang Beibei. As soon as his Weibo post was released, the public opinion on the internet began to change. There were praises, doubts, and onlookers. At least, some of Poplar Fruit's fans were moved by Poplar Fruit and began to help Poplar Fruit defend Fang Beibei. Otherwise, others would attack and abuse her. However, because Poplar Fruit and Old Master Mo's schedule, he could not keep an eye on the internet and accompany Gan Juanji in his war of words. Gan Juanji took this opportunity to continue arguing about Poplar Fruit's unexplained matters. The media was also happy to hype it up, so there was no conclusion to this matter for a while. I told you to stay at home obediently and not cause any trouble. Are you not going to listen to me anymore? Li Zichao was enjoying the news on the internet when he suddenly received a call from his father and was scolded for no reason. Li Zichao complained, "Dad, what are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me." But I really didn't do it this time. This time, Gan Juanji jumped out to slander Fang Beibei. It really had nothing to do with Li Zichao. He was just watching the fun and had no intention of adding fuel to the fire. It's good that you didn't do it." Mr. Li paused and said, "There's something wrong with the limelight recently. Don't cause trouble for me. Otherwise, I'll throw you overseas and you can forget about coming back for the rest of your life." "I know," Li Zichao said helplessly. Not being able to take revenge made him feel uncomfortable. Thousands of miles away, Poplar Fruit's Weibo post wasn't able to settle the domestic issue, but Zheng Yujie was struggling to find a solution for him. "I really don't want to help you." Zheng Yujie resentfully picked up the pillow and threw it at the wall beside the bed as if it were a poplar fruit. She muttered, "Helping you? Helping my love rival? What's the big deal?" Zheng Yujie frantically shook her hair. She wanted to grab a handful of hair and pull it crazily, but then she remembered that Kiki said that Poplar Fruit liked girls with long hair, so she put it down. "But who told you to not be in the country?" She was bullied. Zheng Yujie lay down dejectedly and muttered, "If it were me, I wouldn't be crying and not dare to say anything. I would have kicked open the door of that Gan guy and broken his dog teeth." "Forget it," Zheng Yujie snorted and said. "Just take it that I'm doing a good deed and helping her. One day, you'll remember my good deeds." "Sai, who told me to fall in love with you, my enemy?" Poplar Fruit didn't know that Zheng Yujie had done a good deed behind the scenes. He didn't know that Zheng Yujie had once again found Zheng Mingsheng, who was already the #1 leader in Guangdong province, and asked Zheng Mingsheng, who hadn't yet secured his position, to take action again. She talked to the parents of the Li family, who had a criminal record, and then Li Zichao was scolded for no reason. Fang Beibei didn't dare to go to school anymore. Only Chen Anlin took her to Poplar Fruit's old place, so that she could avoid the hostile and even strange gazes. It also made Poplar Fruit feel relieved. He was worried that Gan Juanji would do something irrational again. Zheng Yujie finally figured out that all of this was directed and acted by Gan Juanji, the rich second generation. Zheng Yujie's temper was ignited all of a sudden. Li Zichao was hiding under the protection of his parents, so she couldn't touch him. Could it be that she couldn't deal with a little rich second generation like him? Although it was impossible to uproot his family's business that had been operating for decades, it was still possible to find a few industrial and commercial departments and the fire department to make trouble for them. Not only that, Zheng Yujie also told someone to tell the chairman of the Gan Group, who was Gan Juanji's father, "If you don't make Gan Juanji shut his dog mouth, don't even think about starting your factory." It wasn't that Gan Juanji's father didn't know about his son's trivial matters, he just couldn't be bothered with it. Rich people could be willful. However, if he really provoked a big shot that even he didn't know who it was, Gan Juanji's father could only quickly call his son over and scold him, locking him up to reflect on his mistakes. Gan Juanji was very unconvinced because he felt that his sense of accomplishment wasn't enough. Not enough to get rid of his psychological trauma. But in the end, Gan Juanji's father told him that the situation was not in his favor, so Gan Juanji gave up on revenge dejectedly. Thus, the netizens were surprised to find that Gan Juanji had deleted all of his Weibo posts almost overnight. And then he didn't make any more noise. It was as if he had made a big fuss about a big play, but halfway through the performance, the troupe had all disappeared, leaving the audience to stare blankly at an empty stage. The initiator had disappeared, and Poplar Fruit was also busy in Sweden. Other than frequently calling Fong Beibei overseas to ask about her well-being, he didn't have time to pay attention to the arguments on the internet. Both sides ignored each other, so naturally, this topic was left unsettled. Even though Fong Beibei's supporters still had the upper hand, even though Gan Juanji had inexplicably given up, Poplar Fruit's hatred for him did not diminish. No matter how others insulted him, Poplar Fruit would not take it to heart. However, Fong Beibei and Kiki were Poplar Fruit's reverse scale. He shouldn't have let him off last time. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Just you wait. Public opinion about this matter on the internet had reached its lowest point, and at this time, people's attention began to be attracted by the biggest news in China. This was the news that everyone, regardless of gender, old or young, regardless of job status, city or town, was paying close attention to. News simulcast even took a minute to give it a preview. On that night, 3 central stations, more than a dozen local stations, and many Chinese channels on both sides of the Taiwan Strait were broadcasting it live. The award ceremony that belonged to Old Master Mo and this year's Nobel Prize winner would be held in the afternoon local time, at 23:30 p.m. Beijing time. Chapter 898. On the afternoon of December 10th, Poplar Fruit, dressed in a suit and leather shoes, followed Old Master Mo, who was in a black tuxedo, to the brightly lit and resplendent Stockholm Music Hall. This year's award ceremony would be held there. Not far away was the former residence of the Nobel Prize. Poplar Fruit and the others had been to the Stockholm Music Hall before. It looked blue from the outside, and there were 10 majestic and tall pillars in front of it. In front of it, there was a statue of Orpheus, the god of songs in Greek mythology. As soon as they got out of the car, many reporters surrounded them. Poplar Fruit acted as both a translator and a bodyguard. He escorted Old Master Mo into the music hall. This was not the first time Poplar Fruit and Old Master Mo appeared in public. 2 days ago, Old Master Mo participated in the press conference organized by the organizing committee at the Swedish Academy. Poplar Fruit also accompanied Old Master Mo to the press conference as a translator. Although it was Old Master Mo's press conference, Poplar Fruit alone carried the banner of translation. He translated in more than 10 languages. Many foreign reporters could not help but point their cameras at Poplar Fruit. Of course, it was not a big deal that day. It was just that at night, some people in the fashion industry who cared about the Nobel Prize occasionally saw the news and pointed out in surprise, "Isn't that the Chinese model Poplar Fruit who shocked the world at the Bali Fashion Week?" As a result, the world was stirred up once again. Ignoring the entertainment reporters, Yangguo's performance at the press conference, which was able to deal with any language with ease, made people sigh in admiration. Some busybodies compared Poplar Fruit with stars such as Natalie, Emma, and Mr. Bean. Of course, in terms of results, Poplar Fruit, who graduated from China Higashiyama University, could not compare with big stars such as Natalie from Harvard and Emma from Brown. In terms of fame in the entertainment industry, Poplar Fruit was just a flash in the pan. However, there were also foreign netizens who disdainfully raised their doubts. With Leon's talent in more than 10 languages, plus his natural talent in mathematics as a Chinese, Yangguo is about to cry. As long as he wants to, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to get into an Ivy League university? It's like Leon has the talent to become the greatest model, but he has no intention of continuing to develop in his modeling career. If Leon went all out, all the top students and stars mentioned above would be blown to smithereens. However, By the time people began to pay attention to Stockholm in Northern Europe, it was already too late when the entertainment reporters began to pack their luggage and rush to interview with Poplar Fruit. The announcement of the Nobel Prize had entered the main topic. There were not many people who could attend the ceremony that day. Even the leaders who came along could only join in the fun outside. Kiki followed Old Master Mo's wife and daughter into the concert hall as a family member and found a seat. Old Master Mo naturally did not sit in the audience. He sat in the 7th seat from the left in the front row. Poplar Fruit sat at the edge of the front row of the audience below. It was not as comfortable as Kiki's seat. He only went up to translate when Old Master Mo received the award and gave a speech. The hall was actually not big. It was really inferior to the Great Hall of the People in our country. Even a larger nightclub could completely beat it. However, the decoration of the hall was indeed very luxurious. The stage was covered with a sky blue velvet carpet, and the N in the middle represented the memory of the Nobel Prize. The background was also decorated with white or light pink flowers, and there was a small bust in the middle. There was no need to ask, it was definitely the Nobel Prize. The procedures for foreigners were simple. It was not like the opening ceremony in China, where the leaders had to give a speech for a few hours. The opening ceremony was the playing of the Swedish Royal National Anthem. Then, to the sound of Mozart's D major music, the winners went on stage and took their seats. Even if the chairman of the organizing committee gave a speech, it was only 10 minutes. It was very concise. Then the first award ceremony began. The Physics Prize. Old Master Mo's Literature Prize was ranked 4th. Unlike some of the other winners, Old Master Mo received the award alone. Therefore, he had a full 5 minutes to give a speech. Of course, Old Master Mo did not give an impromptu speech. Before this, he had spent 2 days writing the speech. Poplar Fruit had also received the speech and had already translated it. There was also an English translator in the venue. Poplar Fruit was responsible for the Swedish translation. Poplar Fruit thought that he would not be nervous because he had seen the world. However, he found that the paper in his hand was still wet with sweat. He could not help but smile bitterly. He took a deep breath and finally resolutely stuffed the paper into his suit pocket. What's there to be afraid of? All the lines are memorized in your head, and even if the teacher improvises a few lines, you can rely on your own interpretation ability to cope with it. Yang Guo roared at herself in her heart. People with strength have nothing to fear. If you have strength, you should hold your head high and not cower. Here, Poplar Fruit looked at his teacher and found that he was smiling calmly. He could not help but admire him. To be honest, Old Master Mo was not handsome. Furthermore, among the winners, he was the shortest one. However, the old man had an extraordinary presence. His small eyes calmly looked at the 2 physics professors who were receiving their awards. There was a faint smile on his face. Perhaps this was because he had been through a lot in his life. No matter how strange or solemn the environment was, he could handle it calmly. Perhaps this was the so-called master's demeanor? Poplar Fruit secretly set a goal for himself. He calmed down and enjoyed the award ceremony. During the classical music program in the middle of the award ceremony, Poplar Fruit suddenly made an interesting discovery. Regardless of age, most of the great scholars and people who won the Nobel Prize were like Old Master Mo. Their foreheads were bald, and their hairlines were extending in the direction of baldness. Many of them even had balding hair. This had nothing to do with race. Poplar Fruit saw many white people who were like this. Could it be that people who were scholars were so easily bald? Poplar Fruit could not help but make a malicious guess. Could it be that I pulled my hair too hard? Although Poplar Fruit was usually very relaxed, he often encountered academic problems that required him to ponder for a long time. Fortunately, he did not have the habit of pulling his hair. His habit was to do other things while thinking about the problem at the same time. Looks like I have to be more careful in the future. I can't just pull my hair, and I have to pay attention to nutrition. Otherwise, it would be scary to be bald like these scholars in the future. Poplar Fruit shuddered as he reminded himself. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, Old Mr. Mo's award ceremony was about to begin after Emil Jonathan's clarinet solo. Chapter 899. Under the signal of a staff member, Poplar Fruit walked onto the stage from the side aisle. However, he didn't walk into the crowd's line of sight. Instead, he quietly stood on the left side of the stage, where there was an inconspicuous podium. Poplar Fruit would be there to complete a series of speeches by Old Master Mo. Although Poplar Fruit had been very low-key, he was still tall and strong, so he still attracted some of the audience's attention. One of the young women, who might have come with her parents, covered her mouth. It was unknown if she recognized Poplar Fruit, but she quietly raised her phone and aimed it at Poplar Fruit to start recording. Poplar Fruit stood there, and suddenly remembered something. He turned around and asked the on-site director in a low voice, "Sir, later, when Mr. Powasberg is introducing Mr. Mo Yen, can I translate at the same time? You know, Mr. Mo Yen can only understand Chinese." The on-site director was shocked by Poplar Fruit's pure and fluent Swedish. However, he didn't immediately agree to Poplar Fruit's request. After thinking for a long time, he said, "This is against the rules. You have to know that you are not prepared, so it will cause a bad impact that we can't control." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "You won't doubt my Swedish, right? Since my country has the confidence to send me to translate for Mr. Mo Yen, then I have the ability to not mess up your arrangement. Besides, I'm only translating into Chinese. If my translation isn't ideal, I believe you won't be able to tell. So, what are you worried about?" The on-site director pondered for a moment. He looked into Poplar Fruit's eyes and said, "If you insist, I can give you a chance. However, young man, please remember that if you make a mistake, it won't just affect me. It will also affect Mo Yen and the country you represent." The warning in his words didn't make Poplar Fruit retreat. Although the responsibility seemed to be heavy, Poplar Fruit believed that in his field of expertise, he had the information to do everything well. Before they knew it, the performance had already ended. The chairman of the Nobel Literature Committee, Powasberg, who was also a writer, walked out with a manuscript at the invitation of the host. There was no suspense, but the people on the scene still held their breaths and listened to his introduction to Mo Yen. The next winner was from an eastern country that they were very curious about. Powasberg looked below the stage and began to read the script in his hand. At the same time, a strange but charming translation sounded almost at the same time. Everyone couldn't help but turn their heads and look for Poplar Fruit, who was doing the simultaneous interpretation. Of course, Poplar Fruit's voice was mediated by the equipment, so it was weaker than Chairman Powas's voice. Therefore, the speaker's voice was not affected. Only Mo Yen, his wife and daughter, and a few scholars who knew Chinese were shocked. Ma Yueran was one of them. Mo Yen is a poet. Poplar Fruit paused when translating. This was required by the grammatical format of the simultaneous translation. He tore apart the traditional big words and sublimated the chaotic and complicated individuals. Mo Yen listened carefully. He naturally wasn't listening to Chairman Powasberg's speech, which he couldn't understand, but Poplar Fruit's translation, which sounded like a poem. He originally thought that he would be able to understand if he pretended to smile. He didn't expect Poplar Fruit's unexpected appearance to allow him to truly understand the award speech given to him by the organizers. All kinds of handicrafts, blacksmithing, building houses, digging canals, farming, banditry. He knows everything, and he writes about everything. Almost everything in the world is listed under his pen. Professor Ma Yueran, who was below the stage, opened his mouth in surprise. He could understand Chairman Powasberg's speech, but he believed that even he couldn't blurt out such a concise translation like Poplar Fruit. This was a simultaneous translation. How did Poplar Fruit do it? He didn't get the script in advance because Poplar Fruit had suddenly decided to do this translation. However, he was able to translate every sentence as if it had been carefully crafted for a long time. It was so beautiful that one couldn't help but think about it carefully. However, Poplar Fruit's translation wasn't that straightforward. From Chairman Powasberg's speech, he found that he had misunderstood many things about China. For example, although the ideology and reform movements have changed repeatedly, people's sense of selfishness and inner greed have never been removed. Therefore, Mo Yen wants to protect the small individuals and resist all kinds of unfair actions. From the invasion of China to the tyranny of the Mao era, and the craze of mass production today. As a translator, Poplar Fruit couldn't interrupt the other party and jump out to point out the mistakes. He could only abide by his professional ethics and read out the sentences that he felt must be awkward. Misunderstood? Perhaps our country's cultural dissemination still hasn't reached the top. If they can come into contact with more Chinese thoughts and writings, they'll understand that China isn't as dark as they think. They'll understand that the Chinese aren't as ignorant as they think. Poplar Fruit thought with a heavy heart while translating and multitasking at the same time. Although I can't shoulder the heavy responsibility of cultural dissemination alone, I can do my part and lead more people to join our industry. Poplar Fruit thought to himself. The Swedish Academy congratulates you. I implore you to accept the 2012 Nobel Prize in Literature from the King's hands. After Yang Guo translated the sentence, she stopped. That was because Chairman Powasberg suddenly switched to awkward Chinese and humorously said to Old Master Mo, "Mo yen, please." The audience applauded thunderously, and Poplar Fruit also clapped with all his might. Amidst the applause, Old Master Mo smiled and stood up from his chair. He walked toward the King of Sweden, Carl XVI Gustav, who had just walked to the center of the stage with a wooden square tray. Although he was facing a king, Old Master Mo maintained his composure. He smiled as he took the tray with the 2012 Nobel Prize in Literature award certificate and gold medal, and shook the king's right hand. Then he stood alone in the middle of the stage, smiled, and bowed deeply to the audience. Poplar Fruit, who had read the old man's speech, knew that the bow was to thank his family and friends who had helped him since he started writing. At that moment, countless viewers in China were watching him receive the award on TV. Poplar Fruit thought to himself, they'll see it. Chapter 900. Next up was Old Master Mo's 5-minute acceptance speech. However, Poplar Fruit was a little surprised because he realized that Old Master Mo did not have the original speech script in his hands. He could not help but feel a little strange. Poplar Fruit knew that Old Master Mo did not have a photographic memory like him. Moreover, he was old. If he did not have a script, he would not be able to memorize an essay of a few hundred words. Your Majesties the King, Your Majesties, honorable members of the royal family, ladies and gentlemen. Old Master Mo did not have a script, but he did not panic. Instead, he calmly began to speak. I left my script at the hotel, but I remember my words. Poplar Fruit subconsciously translated as usual. He also habitually imitated the speaker's tone. At this time, the other English translator obviously did not react, and was slower by 2 seconds. Of course, many of the people present could speak Swedish. When they heard Poplar Fruit's translation, they were a little stunned at first. Then they all started to clap. It was unknown whether they were praising Old Master Mo's courage, or encouraging him not to get stage fright. Naturally, Old Master Mo would not have stage fright. Yang Guo looked at him, listened to his next words, and continued to translate. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood that Old Master Mo did not want to speak according to his own script. There were too many words of gratitude to the country and the people. This was not what Old Master Mo wanted to say in the short 5 minutes. Poplar Fruit smiled in his heart. It's okay, I'll play along with you. Fortunately, it was Poplar Fruit. If it were someone else, they would have been flustered by his sudden attack. Originally, Yang Guo did not intend to read the translation according to the script. Now it was just right. He also improvised and continued to translate. A lot of interesting things have happened since he won the award. From this, we can see that the Nobel Prize is indeed a very influential award. Its position in the world is unshakable. Old Master Mo's praise received a lot of applause. I'm the son of a farmer from the northeast of Gaomi in Shandong Province, China. It's like a fairy tale to receive such a huge prize in a solemn hall, but it's undoubtedly a fact. I want to take this opportunity to express my highest respect to the Nobel Foundation and the Swedish people who support the Nobel Prize. I would like to express my highest respect and sincere gratitude to the academicians of the Royal Swedish Academy for standing firm in their beliefs. Old Master Mo's language was very simple. Poplar Fruit also used simple and classical Swedish words to translate for him, especially the word fairy tale. A few words flashed through Poplar Fruit's mind. In the end, his choice resonated with many people present. Winning the Nobel Prize was like a fairy tale coming true. In this world, there were too many people who also harbored this dream and yearned for this call from a young age. Poplar Fruit was no exception. I also want to thank the translators who have translated my works into many languages around the world. Old Master Mo's words stunned Poplar Fruit. He subconsciously turned his head. Coincidentally, Old Master Mo was also looking at him with a smile. Poplar Fruit was only one of the translators he was grateful to. It could be said that other than the translator who first introduced his excellent works to the world, Old Master Mo was the most grateful to Poplar Fruit among all the translators. Their exchange of glances was also noticed by many people. Professor Ma Yueran was also filled with emotions. Without their creative labor, literature would only be literature in various languages. It's because of their labor that literature can become the literature of the world. Old Master Mo's short summary praised the role of translators to the extreme. Poplar Fruit translated it. Although he was a little shy, all the people who were involved in literature or cared about literature clapped their hands. Their applause was thunderous. Poplar Fruit was also honored. Of course, I also want to thank my family and friends. Their friendship and wisdom are shining in my works. Poplar Fruit continued to translate Old Master Mo's acceptance speech. The next sentence made Poplar Fruit hesitate for a second, which was rare. However, his mind worked quickly and he quickly understood what the old man meant. He translated his sentence, which was also rich in philosophy and life experience. Compared to science, literature is indeed useless. I think, but the greatest use of literature is that it is useless. Old Master Mo's sentence could be said to be a classic of this year's Nobel Prize award ceremony. His sentence was not easy to understand. Even Chinese people might be confused by it. When Poplar Fruit translated, he did not translate it directly. He left the puzzle to the audience to figure it out themselves. In this way, the cultural gap was enough to make all the audience confused. He did not think that he was smart enough to fully explain his analysis, because he was only a translator, not a commentator. If he dissected the deepest meaning to the audience, it would also make Old Master Mo's speech lose its original height. Comparing literature and science, literature indeed has no practical value. I think that the greatest value of literature is that it has no practical value. The first use referred to its material use, while the second use covered both spiritual and material uses. The third use was the same as the first. Old Master Mo just wanted to praise the spiritual use of literature in a roundabout way. Poplar Fruit only removed the cultural misunderstanding, and his translation still retained the original philosophy. It made people feel that it was meaningful and terrifying. They could not stop even if they wanted to. Old Master Mo's sentence and Poplar Fruit's translation made everyone fall into deep thought. Old Master Mo also paused at the right time to give time to the audience. These words were not difficult to understand. After they carefully savored Poplar Fruit's translation, they could not help but give Old Master Mo countless likes in their hearts. More people applauded. They did not want to kick up a fuss, but they sincerely wanted to express their gratitude to Old Master Mo, because his evaluation had sublimated the value of literature. Professor Ma Yueran spent the longest time thinking. He didn't understand Old Master Mo's words as fast as Poplar Fruit did. He didn't even understand Old Master Mo's words with the help of Poplar Fruit's translation. Therefore, he applauded loudly. However, he was not only applauding Old Master Mo, but also Poplar Fruit, who was standing beside him in a low profile. The younger generation will surpass us in time. Leon, your talent is actually so amazing. Not many people on the scene could feel how good Poplar Fruit was. They only praised Poplar Fruit's fast translation. Only Professor Ma Yueran and a few Chinese scholars understood that no ordinary translator could translate Mo Yan's words so vividly and quickly. Neither could they. Chapter 901. After Old Master Mo received the award, Poplar Fruit walked down the stage in a low-key manner. Just like how he walked up the stage not long ago, He did not attract much attention. Only a curious girl was holding up her phone and recording him. Poplar Fruit seemed to have sensed it. The moment he walked down the stage, he looked over with a faint smile. It was like an epiphyllum blooming in the night. So quiet and handsome that it was intoxicating. The girl blushed and put away her phone. However, she could not hold back the joy in her heart. With a tap of her finger, she uploaded the video to the internet, a video website, and Twitter to share with her friends. Poplar Fruit did not know, and she did not expect that the video would be crazily shared after she uploaded it. Many people recognized Poplar Fruit's identity, and even more people were impressed by Poplar Fruit's attitude and translation skills. Furthermore, the video was quoted by many foreign media. After all, this was a story for later. Poplar Fruit had completed his most important task in Sweden. His adaptability also prevented Old Master Mo from changing his mind. More importantly, he ensured that Old Master Mo's wisdom did not fade because of the cultural gap. The vastness and profoundness of Chinese culture and the wisdom of Chinese writers could be perfectly displayed in front of foreigners. However, Poplar Fruit's task was not over yet. For the rest of the banquet, Poplar Fruit accompanied Old Master Mo and helped him translate. Many famous people and scholars from the East and West came over to chat with Old Master Mo. On one hand, they wanted to express their respect, and on the other hand, they were curious about him. Poplar Fruit's strength was once again vividly displayed. Any foreigner that came over could easily deal with him. He alone was equivalent to a translation team from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Even if a dozen translators gathered together, they might not be better than Poplar Fruit. I feel that Poplar Fruit, with you by my side, I have received the treatment of a senior official. Old Master Mo said with a smile. When he chatted with Poplar Fruit in private, he did not have too many scruples. After all, they were on the same side. Teacher, you are overpraising me. Poplar Fruit was a little embarrassed. In the middle of the banquet, there was a small program, which was for Old Master Mo to give a speech. Old Master Mo had already written a script for his speech. Don't worry, I'll follow the script this time. Elder Mo said to Poplar Fruit with a smile before he went on stage. In the afternoon, he did not play by the rules. He did not feel guilty towards others, but towards Poplar Fruit, he still felt a little embarrassed. After all, he had caused a little trouble for his disciple. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just a translator. Teacher, you know my ability. Poplar Fruit smiled calmly. In the midst of the elegant applause, Old Master Mo, who was wearing an elegant Chinese tunic suit with black velvet and red lining, slowly walked up to the podium. Poplar Fruit, who was still in his tuxedo, took the microphone from the staff and stood upright behind the podium. He did not steal the limelight and quietly waited for Old Master Mo to start. When the audience quieted down, Old Master Mo smiled and began to speak. However, he did not look at the script. Yes, he wanted to start off with an impromptu speech. I'll say something that is not in the script. Poplar Fruit laughed bitterly in his heart. He knew that Old Master Mo was habitually not playing by the rules again. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to play his part and translate according to Old Master Mo's words. This time, Poplar Fruit used English translation. In fact, most of the people present could understand English, and Swedish was only the official language of the organizers. It was extremely difficult for people from all over the world to understand Swedish. Previously, during the award ceremony, Poplar Fruit used Swedish mainly to give face to the organizers. Now that the banquet was not so formal, Poplar Fruit used a language that everyone could understand. 2 hours ago, the wife of our school's permanent secretary gave birth to my daughter. This is the beginning of a beautiful story. I believe that those of you who understand Chinese or foreign languages can pass on this news to everyone and express your warm congratulations to him. Old Master Mo said with a smile on his face. To be honest, Poplar Fruit felt that Old Master Mo's speech was not in the script, so he polished it a little and expressed it in more concise English. 2 hours ago, the birth of a life is also the beginning of a beautiful story. I would like to share this story with all of you, and I hope that you can share it with more people to express our sincere congratulations. In China, people might scoff and be unmoved, but overseas, People were deeply moved by the birth of a child. Therefore, after listening to Poplar Fruit's translation, people were not stingy with their applause and blessings. The topic of my speech is the storyteller. Old Master Mo seemed to be a little nervous. Luckily, Poplar Fruit helped him with the translation. Through television or the internet, I believe that everyone here has more or less understood the faraway northeast village of Gaomi. You might have seen my 90-year-old father, my brother and sister, my wife and daughter, and my 1-year-old grandson. Old Master Mo said calmly. But there is one person that I miss the most right now, my mother, that you will never see. After I won the award, many people shared my glory, but my mother could never share it. Poplar Fruit translated these words in real time, and they could clearly see that some of the female guests who were easily moved had tears in their eyes. This was the first story Old Master Mo told, the story of him and his mother. The most painful thing in my memory was when I went with my mother to the collective farm to pick wheat. When the people guarding the field came, the wheat pickers all ran away. My mother had small feet, so she couldn't run fast. When she was caught, the tall guard slapped her in the face. Her body swayed and she fell to the ground. The guard confiscated the wheat we picked and left while whistling. The corner of my mother's mouth was bleeding as she sat on the ground. I will never forget the look of despair on her face. The thing I regret the most was when I went with my mother to sell cabbages. Intentionally or unintentionally, I overcharged an old man who bought cabbages by 10 cents. After I finished paying, I went to school. When I came home from school, I saw my mother, who rarely cried, with tears streaming down her face. She didn't scold me. She only said softly, "Son, you made your mother lose face." Old Master Mo's narration was very plain, but Poplar Fruit's translation was very heavy. He wanted to be as close to Old Master Mo's tone as possible, but he was always affected by his narration. Old Master Mo talked about small things, but it always seemed to let the audience feel the unforgettable memories and longing in his heart. The order of the plot in the previous chapter is different from reality, so please don't think too much about it. Chapter 902. Poplar Fruit had always maintained a devout attitude when translating Old Master Mo's speech. This was because only in this way could he better convey his thoughts. However, Poplar Fruit was still a little lacking, or rather his life experience was insufficient. That was why he was brought into the emotional content of Old Master Mo's speech. This was not a mistake that a top translator should make. However, to the audience, this did not sound like a mistake. Or perhaps, they thought that a person who told such a story should have such an emotional speech. However, in Poplar Fruit's mind, this was a mistake that was neither big nor small. It was an unconcealable flaw in his perfection. A real translator should imitate Old Master Mo's calm expression and tone at this moment, and not create a self-righteous tone to infect the readers. Perhaps the speaker did not want to directly bring about an emotional impact from the tone? Poplar Fruit still needed to continue learning. However, at this moment, with Poplar Fruit's translation, the people in the banquet hall held their breaths and listened to Old Master Mo's speech. They had been deeply brought into the world of Old Master Mo's story. Sometimes, I would imitate the sounds of birds and try to talk to the birds in the sky. Sometimes I would tell my heart to a tree, but the birds ignored me, and the tree also ignored me. Many years later, when I became a novelist, many of my fantasies were written into my novels. Many people praised me for having a rich imagination. Some literature enthusiasts hoped that I could tell them the secret of cultivating their imagination. I could only smile bitterly in response. This was a sentiment that many writers could relate to. Even some professors who had achieved their current scientific research results because of their childhood fantasies or achievements also sincerely laughed for Old Master Mo. Just like China's sage Lao Tzu said, "Fortune lies in misfortune, and fortune lies in misfortune." I dropped out of school when I was a child and suffered from hunger, loneliness, and lack of books to read. But because of this, I began to read the big book of social life at an early age, just like our senior writer Shen Kongwen. At this point, there was a sentence in classical Chinese that was a big challenge for all translators. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was prepared. Even if he was not, he could quickly respond and translate it well because he had done research on classical Chinese translation before. Old Master Mo then introduced the creation process of some of his more important works. Some novels originated from dreams, such as The Transparent Carrot, and some novels originated from events in real life, such as The Song of Garlic Flower in Paradise. But regardless of whether it originates from dreams or reality, in the end, it must be combined with personal experience in order to become a literary work with a distinct personality that uses countless vivid details to create typical characters, rich and colorful language, and ingenious structure. Maybe it's because I've experienced a long and difficult life, so I have a deeper understanding of human nature. I know what true bravery is, and I understand what true compassion is. I know that everyone has a hazy area in their heart that is difficult to accurately define good and evil. And this area is the vast world for writers to display their talents. As long as a work accurately and vividly describes this hazy area full of contradictions, it will inevitably surpass politics and have the quality of excellent literature. Poplar Fruit found that when he read Old Master Mo's speech, he was far more inspired than when he listened to Old Master Mo's speech. Perhaps that was the case. Whether a creation originated from a dream or reflected reality, it would eventually return to the category of human beings. Only by having a deep understanding and analysis of human nature, and only by thinking from the standpoint of human beings, could it be possible to write works that could enlighten even the deaf. While translating, he was also learning and reflecting, like a sponge absorbing the creative experience and life insights of a master. All of this was much more valuable than the glory and honor he had gained by standing on such a big stage. Old Master Mo told a lot of stories, some of which were his own scandals, but he still told them without fear. For example, he told the story of a classmate who didn't listen to the instructions and cried while visiting the exhibition of suffering. This wasn't a glorious thing, but Old Master Mo still said it boldly. This incident made me realize a principle, and that is, when everyone cries, some people should be allowed to not cry. When crying becomes a performance, some people should be allowed to not cry. Old Master Mo's concluding speech received thunderous applause from the audience. Of course, people didn't affirm Old Master Mo's whistleblowing, but they affirmed Old Master Mo's honesty and self-reflection. After I won the Nobel Prize in Literature, it caused some controversy. At first, I thought that the object of controversy was me, but gradually, I felt that the object of controversy was someone who had nothing to do with me. I was like a person watching a show, watching everyone's performance. For a writer, the best way to speak is to write. I wrote all the words that I should say in my works. Words spoken with the mouth will scatter with the wind, but words written with a pen will never be erased. I hope that you can patiently read my book. Of course, I have no right to force you to read my book. Even if you read my book, I don't expect you to change your opinion of me. There is no writer in the world who can make all the readers like him. This is even more so in today's era. Old Master Mo said all this in a very calm tone. Just as he said, it was as if he was standing on the side and watching himself, a person who seemed to have nothing to do with him, perform. However, his magnanimity had won the admiration of the audience. I am a storyteller. Because of my storytelling, I won the Nobel Prize in Literature. After I won the prize, many wonderful stories happened. These stories made me believe that truth and justice exist. In the years to come, I will continue to tell my story. Thank you. Old Master Mo ended his long speech that lasted more than half an hour with a few short sentences. Although it lasted for a long time, no one was tired of it. They listened attentively to Poplar Fruit's translation. Finally, with warm and long applause, they expressed their respect for an old writer who had worked hard for the literary industry for many years. Poplar Fruit also stood at the back and applauded thoughtfully. The greatest use of literature is that it is useless. The charm of literature is really great. Poplar Fruit said softly in his heart. Teacher, I also want to be a storyteller. Chapter 903. Nice to meet you, Leon. Poplar Fruit wasn't an important person in the first place. Although he translated for Mo Yen, most of the people's attention was still on Mo Yen and the other Nobel Prize winners. Yang Guo took a break and stood at the side of the buffet area to eat some food. To his surprise, someone greeted him in fluent Mandarin. He turned around and saw a white-haired old man standing in front of him. Poplar Fruit didn't mistake him for a Chinese. After all, he had a Caucasian face. Professor Ma Yueran? Nice to meet you. Poplar Fruit was surprised. He hurriedly bent down and bowed to the old man. The old man was quite tall. However, due to his age, his body was a little hunched. Poplar Fruit bent down and put his head at the same level as the old man. You actually recognized me? Professor Ma Yueran said with a smile. Did you do your homework before coming to Sweden? Yang Guo smiled and said, since I'm participating in such a grand conference, of course I have to do my homework beforehand. However, I've read a lot of your works and translations when I was learning Swedish, so I know a little about you. He spoke in Mandarin with Professor Ma Yueran mainly, because it was Professor Ma Yueran's field. He would be happy to speak in Mandarin with him. Really? Which of my works have you read? Professor Ma Yueran asked with interest. I have read all of your translations, including the 1983 Swedish translation of Bei Dao and Gu Cheng's poem, The Shore and the Spoiled Child. Your academic works include The Responsibility Forms of Interrogative Sentence Structures in Journey to the West, a study of the pronunciation of Western China. Poplar Fruit counted with his fingers and narrated to Professor Ma Yueran. Poplar Fruit's expression was very excited. It was very different from the calmness he had when he was translating. It was because he had met his idol. Poplar Fruit did not worship celebrities, nor did he chase after them. However, he had his own idols, and most of them were in the academic field. Professor Ma Yueran was one of them. Professor Ma Yueran was deeply interested in Chinese culture. He was the one who truly expanded the field of sinology in Europe from archaeology and linguistics to literature, and introduced a large number of Chinese literary works to Europe. It could be said that in terms of cultural dissemination, Poplar Fruit's evaluation of his decades, and even more than half a century of persistent promotion of Chinese literature, had even surpassed greatness. In fact, more than 20 years ago, in 1988, Professor Ma Yueran had always thought that the Nobel Prize for Literature should be awarded to Mr. Shen Kongwen, a writer who had stopped writing since the 1950s, but whose works before that were already great enough. Unfortunately, Mr. Shen Kongwen passed away in 1988. Professor Ma Yueran, who received the news, called the Swedish cultural counselor in China. However, the other party did not know Mr. Shen Kongwen. Because of this, Professor Ma Yueran angrily hung up the phone. Professor Ma Yueran even tried to persuade the other judges to make an exception and award the award to someone who had already passed away. However, he did not succeed after many attempts. In the end, the 64-year-old Professor Ma Yueran walked out of the conference room in tears. Whether it was Professor Ma Yueran's achievements or his attitude toward Chinese culture toward Mr. Shen Kongwen, Poplar Fruit had always been in awe of this name. Okay, you don't have to read it anymore. The wrinkles on Professor Ma Yueran's face bloomed. He smiled and said, I believe that you did read what I wrote. I didn't come here to test you on this. I was curious and surprised by your wonderful translation performance today, so I came to see a talented young man like you. You flatter me. Poplar Fruit quickly bowed and thanked him. Actually, I read the speech in advance, so I didn't encounter any difficult problems during the translation. Everyone else wanted to take the credit for themselves, but Poplar Fruit did not want to. He tried his best to explain, as if he was worried that Professor Ma Yueran would misunderstand. Humility. Professor Ma Yueran pointed his finger at Poplar Fruit and said with a smile, Humility is a virtue. I know that you Chinese like to be humble, but in Sweden, you should do as the Romans do and take your own achievements seriously. I, Professor Ma Yueran, have a pair of good eyes. You might have something to prepare tonight, but the translation in the afternoon was all improvised by you, right? Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. He scratched his head embarrassedly and said with a smile, Professor, you really have a sharp eye. You're flattering me? Although Professor Ma Yueran was old, he was still in good spirits. He laughed and used a Chinese word to tease poplar fruit, just like an old urchin. Haha, Professor, your Chinese is really smooth, poplar fruit said with admiration. It's never too old to learn. Professor Ma Yuan mischievously continued to show off his Chinese skills. Although I'm not Chinese, I've lived for more than 80 years. I've eaten more rice than you have walked, so it's not surprising that I can learn better. You on the other hand. Professor Ma Yuan smiled and said, Leon, I think you're very outstanding. It's not because you've achieved something great, but because you're able to master Swedish and many other languages so well at your age. That's amazing. Although the grammar was very standard, Professor Ma Yuan's speech was a little incoherent. Perhaps it was because he was old. After all, there were not many people in the world who could still stand and speak. I'm very honored to have your recognition, poplar fruit said with a smile. Languages are my hobby and research direction. It's the same for Swedish. I like this language very much, not only because of its beauty, but also because it has inspired me a lot in my academic research. Poplar fruit briefly explained his research on translation to Professor Ma Yuan. Professor Ma Yuan nodded and said, Leon, you're really amazing to be able to draw inferences from one example. Today, I just wanted to see a translator who could translate Swedish so well. Professor Ma Yuan smiled and said, I didn't expect to find a future academic. I really hope that I can see the day when you become a new generation of academic masters in China. It was probably very difficult. After all, Professor Ma Yuan was already 80 years old. No one knew the limits of his lifespan. However, it was not certain. If he could live to 99 years old like Master Ji, then there was really hope. When I go back, I'll definitely remember your recognition and expectations, poplar fruit said with a slightly serious tone. I believe that day will definitely come. Professor Ma Yuan didn't chat much with poplar fruit. He was old and his mental state couldn't support chatting for too long. With the help of his assistant, Professor Ma Yuan left poplar fruit with his faith and blessings before bidding farewell to him. Chapter 904. After receiving the award, Old Master Emo naturally did not return to China immediately. He still had 2 days of official activities in Sweden. As the translator, poplar fruit naturally had to accompany him throughout the whole process. During this period, poplar fruit would call back whenever he was free to take care of Fang Beibei, who had been scolded because of Ganjuanji. Fang Beibei's situation was much better than when she had been scolded by her classmates. On one hand, poplar fruit's care and consideration made her feel relieved. As long as her boyfriend trusted her, other people's sarcastic remarks were nothing. On the other hand, for some reason, the arrogant and crazy Ganjuanji had also stopped. From the internet, it could be seen that netizens' scolding of Fang Beibei had decreased a lot. Fang Beibei was also relieved. Fang Beibei still did not go back to class. Although Ganjuanji had stopped, there were still some people who were jealous of Fang Beibei's popularity. Poplar fruit was worried about his girlfriend's safety and mood, so he asked her to take a week off. Fortunately, Fang Beibei had won the award. The school was much more lenient towards her. If it had been an ordinary student, it would have been extremely difficult to ask for leave. One would even give up on the idea after seeing the complicated procedures. Besides Fang Beibei, poplar fruit also called Fang Beibei's parents, who had been worried about her. The two old people's attitudes towards poplar fruit were still a little complicated. Previously, Kiki had completely rejected poplar fruit. Even though they had accepted Kiki later, they were still a little unhappy. Of course, they would not be angry at Kiki, so they could only let poplar fruit bear this unhappiness. Fang Beibei's online public opinion crisis had a little impact on the two old people's lives. When they walked on the street, the neighbors they knew would give them strange looks. Although they didn't say it directly, the two old men knew what they were secretly discussing. The two elders were also worried that poplar fruit and Fang Beibei would break up because of this incident. It was not that they were obsessed with poplar fruit, but Fang Beibei could not take a second blow. Besides, if the news of the breakup were to spread, who would dare to take their daughter as their daughter-in-law? Uncle, Auntie, don't worry, poplar fruit said with a smile. I'm clear about this. Isn't it just someone deliberately slandering our Beibei? We must be united against the enemy. Fong Beibei was fine, and Poplar Fruit could finally rest assured. Although he did not say that he would let go of Gan Juanji, his main energy at the moment was still on old Mo, and he also had to deal with the entertainment reporters from all over the world who came to find him from thousands of miles away. Poplar Fruit was very popular abroad in early October. The attention of foreigners on Poplar Fruit gradually calmed down, because Poplar Fruit himself disappeared. However, less than 2 months later, Poplar Fruit came back. This time he had changed his appearance. He was no longer the handsome male model with slightly curly hair. Poplar Fruit had turned into a long-legged interpreter in a suit. Especially after the video of Poplar Fruit translating at the awards ceremony and banquet was uploaded to YouTube, people finally began to take seriously the words that Poplar Fruit had said before. And these words, that he had his own ideals and his own pursuits, were once beautifully ignored by people. He's still so handsome that I can't breathe. Many female fans from South Korea and Japan replied with strange symbols below. Their aesthetic standards were not much different from the Chinese people's, and they could not help but love Poplar Fruit. They did not hesitate to go to China's social networks and painstakingly register an account. Then they followed Poplar Fruit's Weibo. It was not that Poplar Fruit did not have Twitter, but he rarely used it. The discussions that compared Poplar Fruit to Western top students gradually changed their one-sided evaluation. From the video, other than the fact that Poplar Fruit's education was a little lacking, it seemed that he did have the chance to become a better top student. Although the entertainment reporters were very busy, they won in numbers. Therefore, such a situation often occurred. If Old Master Mo participated in an official event with other Nobel Prize winners, the reporters' interviews would usually be evenly distributed. Old Master Mo would even receive fewer interviews than the others. However, after the award ceremony, people realized that Old Master Mo was surrounded by too many reporters. Compared to him, the other Nobel Prize winners were not as popular. Of course, they did not know about the awkwardness between Poplar Fruit and Old Master Mo. Old Master Mo was supposed to be the main character, but the microphones were all extended to Poplar Fruit, who was beside Old Master Mo. These were all entertainment reporters. They were originally there to interview Poplar Fruit. Only those who could not squeeze to Poplar Fruit's side turned to ask Old Master Mo. Old Master, I heard that you're the winner of this year's Nobel Prize in Literature. May I ask, what do you think of Leon? Can he achieve more brilliance on the path of translation and literature than on the path of modeling? Although they were asking Old Master Mo, they were actually asking questions about Poplar Fruit. Fortunately, these reporters spoke in a strange foreign language. Old Master Mo could not understand them at all, so it saved him from the awkwardness. In order to appease these entertainment reporters who would not give up until they reached their goal, Poplar Fruit later got Old Master Mo's consent and held a press conference with the help of the embassy. They asked a lot of questions, such as when will I return to the modeling stage? After Poplar Fruit came back, he smiled and shook his head. He said to Old Master Mo, "But I told them that I don't plan to be a model anymore." In fact, they also asked a lot of gossipy questions, such as how Poplar Fruit felt about his girlfriend being slandered in China. God knew how they found out about rumors that should only be spread in China. Fortunately, foreigners were more open-minded. They did not think that first love was a big deal, so Poplar Fruit was not angered by them. Focus on your studies. Not only do you have to translate, but you also have to spend some time learning how to write. Old Master Mo reminded him, "Don't just follow me around and think about translating. You should listen to the lectures that I give and the experience that I introduce." Yes, Poplar Fruit laughed. "I also want to be a storyteller. When I go back, I will sort out some of the articles that I have written recently. Teacher, please give me some guidance." That's a good attitude to learn. Old Master Mo nodded with satisfaction. By the way, teacher, Poplar Fruit saw that Old Master Mo was happy, so he brought up the matter that Old Master Mo had asked him not long ago. "I know that you must be very busy when you go back. You have to give lectures everywhere. However, since it's a lecture anyway, Why don't you come to our school and give a lecture? Our teachers and students have been waiting for you to come for a long time. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It's not a big deal. Old Master Emo waved his hand and said, after the spring festival, I will see when I have the opportunity to go to Yang City next semester. I will tell you in advance that I will give a lecture at Higashiyama University. I'd also like to see what kind of school Dongshan University is, to be able to nurture you. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.